It's live.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, it's 6:01 and we're live.
Good evening. I'd like to call the April 27th, 2021 electric utility meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Betty Resch,
Here?
Vice Mayor Herman Robinson,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga,
Present.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy.
Here.
And we now have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I didn't get to Commissioner Kimberly Stokes, sorry.
You gotta stay with it. Sorry,
I'm here.
she's here. It's been a long day.
We're just excited.
I know, we just want to get to work.
Go.
Now we have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Maliga.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, are there any additions, deletions, or reordering?
There are not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Presentations. Next is a presentation regarding the payment plan by Mr.
Yes.
Miller. By Mr. Liberty.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Ed Liberty here, Director of Electric Utilities. I did want to take a few minutes before we get into a discussion on the payment plan to talk about the recent outages that we've had. I did put together something very quickly. It was not on the agenda for tonight, but if it pleases the audience, we can walk you through some information on some of our recent outages, or we can go right into the payment plan discussion.
Well, do we have a motion to allow Mr. Liberty to expand on the outages?
I make so motion.
Any second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Liberty.
You're welcome. So we do have this by email. We will get it out to the public. And let me get this going from the beginning here, just to walk the audience through some of the events recently. So we were actually doing very, very well for a period of 4 or 5 months plus. And then the events of the last 10 days or so really reversed our very successful trend. And I'll walk the audience through what we had. So starting on the 13th, we experienced, and each one of these bullets are a series of outages that we had. And I'll give you a little bit more detail. But starting on the 13th at our 15th Avenue substation, 15th Avenue sub, on the south side of the city, we had 1,900 plus customers out for an hour and 18 because of an iguana that climbed up on top of the transformer and made contact between the lightning arrestor, one of the lightning arrestors that's on top of the transformer, and the transformer case itself, the frame. I obviously won't show the pictures of what happened to the iguana, but
Right.
I think we all have a mental image of the disappointment of the 1,900 plus customers while we corrected the problem. We did remove the iguana. The crews were on scene immediately, began making repairs and restored the system. We had, by example, we had a problem a year ago with that substation with a failed lightning arrestor. And in our haste to move customers over to adjoining circuits, we wound up creating more problems than we were solving because of the speed that we were going at and the load that we were picking up. So this was a judgment call on the part of the operators and to give the maintenance folks time to go ahead and remove the iguana and make the repairs rather than going through the switching exercise. So that was a tough an hour and 18 minutes. We don't enjoy it any more than the customers do, but we did get them restored. On the 17th, at our Canal substation, and I know Commissioner Maliga was out there to see this herself. That substation has become a very popular nesting location for parakeets or parrots. In this particular case, a parrot with a twig. We have pictures of the twig, but we won't show you pictures of the parrot. Made contact and took out over 5,000 customers for 29 minutes. In that 29 minutes, everybody is scrambling to go figure out exactly what happened. We're taking instructions from system operations as to where the event may have occurred. Crews are writing things out immediately and very quickly narrowed it down with experience to where it could be. Made an assessment that we could go ahead and restore service and began bringing that substation back. in 29 minutes. The 19th began a series of lightning strikes, and we're going to walk you through in a couple of slides the intensity of lightning strikes that we took. Starting at about 2:30, 2:40, I was on vacation nearby, swinging a golf club. I did not get struck by lightning, but unfortunately our circuits did. And we dropped 1,600 customers for 47 minutes due to that lightning strike. We had subsequent lightning strikes on the 1801 circuit, and then we had some cascading problems that came from that lightning on what we call the East 03. A day later, we experienced a bamboo contact that took out 2,800 customers. That was on the West 05. We had recently trimmed that route. This was a customer-owned bamboo tree that was well outside the right-of-way, but as the winds blew heavy from the west, it blew that bamboo over onto the wires and caused that outage. That has since been trimmed rather aggressively and effectively by our staff with a burst of adrenaline. On the 25th, which was a Sunday afternoon outage, we had a switch failure on the West 05. And down below, the lower bullet, you'll see that the West 05 had been inspected. So we, last year in July, when the system was at a pretty high level of loading, had done infrared inspections of the system, which allow us to determine hotspots, which are indicators of potential outages. So we had identified a hotspot on that switch, and then that switch was subsequently repaired and returned to service. So it was only in service about 4 or 5 months or so between the time that we made the repairs and cleared that problem before it failed. So these are rather old switches. We're working our way through the system to replace many of them. We believe that part of the problem is related to high fault currents, which is a nature of the design of our system. But that gives you an idea. So I know there's obviously frustration, and there certainly is on staff's part about these outages, but just wanted folks to know that these are things that many times are outside of our ability to control them, and we have to react. So the lightning events, this happens to be data that we get online in a service that we subscribe to. We had 282 lightning events. This was on the 19th, I believe, that were within 6 miles of our location. Now, let's exclude immediately, though, the ones that are, offshore in the ocean, right? So we're more focused then on looking at the history of the ones that were nearby to us. And it's hard to imagine, but if you looked at our system from a bird's eye view or from a satellite view, you obviously see the city, you see our trees, you see the topography. But what's hard to see is this network or mesh of overhead electrical conductors, all grounded, carrying energy as attractive targets. If we go to the next level, this is these are ellipses and a high level of confidence by the people who track these lightning strikes. And you can just see what happened that day, that Monday afternoon, with the intensity of the lightning strikes that sat right on top of us and caused some significant outages and damage to the system that doesn't show up right away, but shows up down the road. These are quite, no pun intended, quite striking when you see this type of lightning activity. I know I spoke with Commissioner McBoy this afternoon. He has a lot of interest in this because he does a lot of research in the Everglades, for example, and his equipment is subject to lightning exposure. But this tells quite a story about what we saw that Monday afternoon. This is the incident with the bamboo. You can see this is looking north along this right of way, and you can see these tall, thin, spindly bamboo shoots have overgrown, and when the wind blows from the west, they fall over onto our conductors and take out thousands of customers. So to the extent that the public is listening tonight, please trim back your bamboo and your vegetation, because it does put not only you at risk from a contact, but many, many, many of your neighbors at risk when your vegetation grows over into the power lines. We are in a 3-year cycle of vegetation clearing on our on our major conductors and our backyards as well. But this bamboo grows much faster than we can catch in a 3-year cycle. And we had been in this area not too long before this, but when the winds switch and blow at high velocities from an entirely different direction than you normally get, you can see these types of problems. But this bamboo is growing well outside our right of way. It's not until the wind switches and blows it over that it becomes a problem, but it is a problem. This is a picture of the top of the transformer or the breaker bushing. You can see the twigs. We did not include the picture of the bird. You can see the discoloration on that. That's a bushing. We call a bushing. It's connected to the device down inside the cabinet. The flashover. So the crew identified this quickly from above, saw the twigs, and then were able to isolate things so they could get in there and work safely, clean up the bushings with experience, telling them that this was probably the problem and we could go ahead and try to energize again. And that's what they did. So that's a brief update on what we've experienced with respect to outages. I think that the public is probably curious and probably demanding of answers as to what happened and why, after such a good stretch of toll-free operations, we suddenly had 10 days that we would like to have back from a weather point of view and from an animal contact point of view. Any questions on that?
When will that go up on the web? Where will people be able to find that information?
I'll look to the clerk. We can certainly post that as a part of the packet, and we can certainly add it to the website as well.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
I haven't asked questions.
We will want to make sure that it's ADA compliant before we actually post it. So these slides were literally put together in the last couple of hours. So we have to be ADA compliant before we post them publicly. Certainly, I can email them to anybody who wants them.
Right. That'd be helpful, I think. Thank you. Any other questions? I see no lights on. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Liberty. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
It's been the subject of some inquiry.
I will say, though, it's not a question. I will say that when I was with Ed on Thursday and went back to where the birds are, I videotaped. There are hundreds of these parrots, and they were busy. Like, you wouldn't even know that they had just taken all of the nest down. And the iguanas are like 3.5 feet to 5 feet.
Where was this? Where was it?
It's on the, I don't want to.
Is it the Hyperlux or
Congress, and it's past Congress off of, what's the road?
Dave, this was Davis. We call it, we reference it as a canal sub, but it was off of Davis Road on the western part of the service territory.
Thank you.
So if you ever want to be entertained, there's great wildlife out there.
No shortage of iguanas and parrots. So
Parrots I like, the iguanas not so much.
yes.
Thank you.
So Mayor, if I will, at a recent meeting, you had asked for an update on the payment plans that our customers are on. So we've put together this presentation. It provides not only an update on the payment plans, but also what we refer to as the aging report and some of the work that we've done to help customers get onto payment plans during the pandemic as they were in financial distress. So working with me tonight is Franco Bolito, our customer service manager. And you'll notice the multiple logos here. So this presentation is from the perspective, not just the electric utility, but the overall utilities, electric, water, and sewer, and some of the refuse charges that show up on people's bills. So that's the documentation that you'll be seeing here. So Franco, are you nearby live on the presentation?
Yes, good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. For the record, Franco Bolito, Customer Service Manager.
And I'll let Franco do the talking here, and I'll try to drive through the slides.
Ed, did you want to give a little narrative on how this all started, the payment plans?
Yes. So during the pandemic, as we very quickly around the March 15th, 16th, 17th of March, about that time frame, stopped making service disconnects for non-payment. We shortly after put in place a payment plan that was approved by the commission that was seated at that time. That included 12 months terms for the residential customers and 24 months of terms for the commercial customers. And I believe they started October 1 or November 1, something like that. And we've been tracking how customers are doing on those payment plans. And there's about 1,100 plus, 1,200 plus total customers on these payment plans. So we'll walk you through how they're doing on making their payments as a group. We don't have individual customer accounts information that we're going to put on the screen tonight, but certainly that information is available. If you wanted to have that level of detail, we could certainly get it. That's public information, but we're not going to, we would put 1,200 plus names and statuses up on the screen. We'd be here all night going through the list, but we do have that detailed information if you do want it. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Franco to walk us through what these numbers mean and where they come from.
Right, so thank you, Ed. And Madam Mayor, I would just like to give you an update on the payment plan. So as Ed stated, this started during the pandemic, and it was a COVID-19 payment plan, 12 months for residential customers, 24 months for commercial customers. It ended, eligibility for this COVID-19 payment plan ended October 1st when we reinstated the service disconnects for non-payment. So what you're looking at here is a total of 1,194 customers, both combined residential and commercial accounts that are on the payment plans. The original payment plan amount was $990,000 and change. To date, we have received $592,000 that have been paid both by residential and commercial customers. So that's about 50, almost 60% have paid their payment plan. They're still outstanding almost $400,000, $398,000 are still outstanding between residential and commercial accounts. And then if you look to the far right in orange, you'll see that of the payment plan customers, about 28% are past due. So 300, a little over 300 of the 1,200 or 1,194 are past due. And those are the ones that we've really been working with. My team and I have been trying to be as compassionate as possible with customers. We understand, a lot of people lost their job. They can't pay their bills. They just don't have the money to pay their bill. So really, we've been working with them very closely on a case-by-case basis to get them in contact with the Palm Beach County Community Action, get them to apply for financial assistance, anything that we can to help them stay on the payment plan so that they don't fall off the payment plan and get disconnected again. And you'll see a breakdown at the bottom of the slide here. The difference between residential payment plans, so we've got about 1,115 total residential customers on payment plans. 320,000 are still remaining to be paid or outstanding. And then on the commercial payment plans, we've got 79 total commercial payment plan accounts. 77,000 are still remaining to be paid. Any questions on this slide?
Yes, Commissioner Maliga.
Out of the 333 that are still past due, how many of those are commercial accounts versus residential?
That's a very good question. I can get that information for you and provide it to the commissioners and the mayor.
Okay, and then of that, I'm a business owner in town, and so I'm really adamant on the commercial aspect. The commercial payment plans, what is the payment that we expect them to make in that payment plan? Is it $25 a month? Is it $50 a month? What are we asking those commercial properties to pay?
So that's a very good question. Madam Mayor, if I may, whether it's a commercial account or residential account, when they signed up for the payment plan, they were past due. So let's say for round numbers, discussion purposes, they were past due $1,000. So we put that $1,000 into the payment plan, divided by, in a commercial account scenario, we'll divide that by 24 months. So that's your payment plan amount every month. And you have to make that payment plan amount along with your current amount that's due. So what we did is we actually came up with a different version of the paper bill for customers who are on a payment plan, made it very easy at the very top to put in boxes color-coded that says, this is your payment plan amount, this is your current usage, this is the total that's due this month. And then below that, we show what the total remaining is on the payment plan. So that's how we're doing it. That's how we've been doing it.
I have a question about that. This is anecdotal. I don't, a citizen told me that she was on a payment plan, and when she got her bill, it said total amount due at 250, whatever it was, okay? And she came home and her electricity was turned off because the additional, I think it was a $50 payment, had not been shown on the bill. So she paid her regular one, but not her extra one, and it was turned off. Does that sound like it could have happened?
Again, we look at those cases on a case-by-case basis. Usually it's just the customer overlooking the payment plan. So that's where a lot of education has to come in and gets involved with, here's your payment plan amount. It's an extra $50 every single month on top of your current bill. So once we educate them on it, once we help them to get current and get back on the payment plan, most customers understand that. And we don't want them to get disconnected. If they're already working with us on a payment plan, the last thing we want is for something to occur where they get disconnected again. So we've been very compassionate to work with them on a case-by-case basis every time.
I think this said total amount due, like $250, which she paid. But the extra apparently wasn't included in that total. I mean, and I will go back and I'll get a copy of that bill from her just to make sure she wasn't making a mistake. But that's what she had told me, which seemed, hard to understand.
Yeah, what happens on those cases, Madam Mayor, is that the paper bills will cross with their payment. And I see that a lot. They'll receive a paper bill. It's not the real-time payment that's due, and that's where the confusion comes in. So that's where we work with them. We show them that they can get that information real-time online or through the pay-by-phone system. So they have the actual amount that is due right now versus a paper bill that was printed maybe a couple of weeks earlier, put in the mail. By the time it gets to them, they've received the payments posted, and so the numbers don't match. That's usually what occurs in those scenarios.
Okay, Commissioner Maliga?
Just one more question in regards to the commercial accounts. Once we know how many of the 333 are actually commercial accounts, then I'd like to know how many of those are still in business, the ones who are still on the commercial payment plan.
Well, does it say below the 79 commercial?
Yeah, but how many are still in business? Just because they're on a payment plan, are they still operating and in business?
Good question.
And then I'd like to know, just for, my own, I guess, to put me at ease, have we looked at the ones who have gone out of business and the ones who are still in business, what we have as far as a security deposit? And is there a way to possibly help catch these people up by using the security deposit and maybe lowering that minimum repayment plan and stretching that over the next 24 months?
Well, I think, Ed, I'll let you jump in there. We've had those conversations in the past.
Yeah, so let me go through a couple things first. So if an account is still showing on the payment plan, then they are probably not out of business, because if they were out of business, the account would have been finalized, and then they would either be no longer on the payment plan, they would be in a collections type mode. With respect to the deposits, the way that the rules are currently written as approved by the commissions for many years, the commercial deposits are not allowed to be returned until the account is finalized. And the many of these commercial deposits, particularly if the accounts were opened many years ago, are substantially lower than that deposit would be if the account was opened today. So at the moment, unless the commission were to give us instructions and vote to do so, we're not allowed to apply deposits to current accounts. They can only be returned when the account is closed. That's for the commercial account. Residential is slightly different.
So this is something that if we thought that it might help, we as a body could vote on and possibly make a change for those who were affected by COVID and the pandemic.
Certainly, those are all policies which this body could choose to modify as you see fit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Let me go back.
Commissioner Stokes has a question.
I just wanted to ask about the 330 accounts that are past due. Is that just, do we know if they're paying their monthly bill now and they're just past due on their debt? Or are they not paying? Like, how far behind are they? Is it just the payment plan that they haven't been able to catch up with? Or are they like, they're in a rhythm, they're paying their monthly bill, they just haven't been able to pitch in that extra?
The extra.
So if I may, I've let Franco provide a lot more detail, but the answer probably varies by account. But I'll let Franco drill down a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's a great question. It really varies. Sometimes customers only miss their installment or payment plan amount. Some people don't have enough to pay the entire bill. So they have to be current. They've got to pay their current consumption for the month plus the installment plan to be current and not considered past due or delinquent. So it is going to vary by account, but we can look at that and provide whatever details you would like.
And I'm just curious for the people, so if they're making like a reasonable effort to be paying every month and they just can't cover the whole thing, how much notice do we give them before we, turn off their power?
So we may allow to any customer, we may allow a yellow notice, which is a reminder notice, and that's mailed out 7 days before their shutoff date or disconnect date. And so that's usually when we'll get a lot of traffic, customers calling in saying, oh, I forgot, whatever reason it is. And we work with them on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes they say, I need an extension. I don't have enough to pay the bill. Can you help me? Can you work with me? So it really depends. Every customer is different.
And I have questions real quick. And I don't know your last name, and I don't feel familiar. I don't want to call you Franco because I'm I've never met you. But are you an employee? I'm a little confused about customer service. We outsource a lot of it. Are you an actual employee of the city?
Yes,
Yeah, this is at Liberty. That's Franco Bellito, Bellito. I'll give you a little bit back. Franco is an employee of the city. He's our manager of the customer service function. As the manager of the customer service function, he manages all of the customer service activities. Those activities include the call center. In other words, when phone calls are made, he manages that function. The first call is received, in our case, many times by Enco, which is a company that we engage to answer calls and answer questions for customers as quickly as possible. And then if Enco cannot answer the question, it's escalated in-house back to our team here at the annex, which also reports directly to Franco. Franco also manages the billing function and overseeing the process of getting bills out to customers, the checks of the bills or checking of the bills, and then the daily accounting for all of the revenues that come in. And then we quickly provide that accounting over to the finance department, which they match up against the bank deposits, because the money doesn't come through Franco's team per se. It comes in lock boxes in various sources and then goes into the bank accounts. Franco also manages the customer service function, where customers are applying to open accounts or closing accounts. So that's a separate activity that's also under his direction. So and then he's got a whole bunch of other special projects which we've assigned to him to bring technology to bear. For example, an IVR system, which is going to allow us to answer a lot of customers' questions through keystrokes, means for routing phone calls, managing the volume of phone calls, and some other technology projects that are all related to providing service to customers. But Franco is an employee, and he does report directly to me.
Okay. At the annex, is that open again for people to come walk in and when I would go in and ask them a question?
No, we actually closed the annex to, let's start with the phases that we went through. We closed the annex to customer cash payments. That ended at the end of December of 2019. So by January 1 of 2020, we were no longer accepting cash payments at the annex, because we put in place, instead of having only the annex during business hours for customers to make cash payments, we added the Pay Near Me function. So all of those customers who wanted to pay in cash could pay at any 7-Eleven, Family Dollar, and CVS in the country.
Okay.
Their Lake Worth bill. So that took about 3,500 to 4,000 people of foot traffic out of the system, effective January 1 of 2020. What remained until March of 2020 for another 3 months or so was the ability for customers to come in and make an application to turn on service or turn off service. When the pandemic struck and we needed to protect the workforce and obviously protect the customers as well, we stopped that service in person and went to 100% email and text and telephone-based support for those customers. So since March, we've been operating very successfully with that method. What it also did was it allowed customers, or gave them the ability to interact with us without having to come downtown to the annex, without having to find a place to park, without having to wait in line for service. And we handle all of those calls now by phone and by email. So when a customer wants to open an account, for example, they can just, if you will, just take a copy of their lease. That way we know they have the ability to lease that property. We can make sure that the landlord has the right business license in place to do that. And we do all of that remotely without having to take off a day from work or come downtown with their family in tow to go do this. We do it all remotely now.
So they would call the customer service number, which is, I forget the number. Do they get a person on the phone or do they get an answering machine?
Let me have Franco walk you through that. He's the better one.
That's, yeah.
So
Thank you.
currently, Madam Mayor, when you dial the customer service number 533-7300,
Right.
routes to our call center first. They are tier 1. They answer the calls, try to do triage, see if they can help them. If it's an escalation, then they will transfer that call to our local office, where I have 3 staff members that are on the phones taking those transferred calls.
But does someone, when they call in, does someone actually pick up the phone and answer it? Or is it, you've reached the customer service of Lake Worth, please leave a message, we'll get back to you?
No, there was a period of time during COVID, I think it was probably June or July when COVID really hit, where we switched to a voicemail system when a call was transferred back to the local office. And that's just because we were dealing with 50% absenteeism.
Right.
So I've only got a total of 10 staff members that work in the annex building. And there were days where 5 of them were, out sick or being quarantined for whatever reason. So we had to switch to a voicemail box, and then we could listen to the messages and call them back. But today, as of October 1st, and as of right now, we get live transfers back from the call center.
Thank you.
I should also point out that during COVID and the early days of COVID, many of our people were working remotely from their homes.
That's
So
correct.
we had to quickly scramble to get them set up with laptops, and many of them were using either their own personal cell phones to receive calls, or we had to rapidly equip them with city cell phones so that they could take these calls from home, because we didn't want that customer service function to stop. So if you can imagine, in addition to the baseline of everyday business, we then had all of the customers who were, obviously and rightfully distraught with wanting to keep up with payments, want to understand what was going to happen. So we had the very, very large volumes of phone calls. So the total volume of phone calls actually increased as we were adapting to the new, what we hope is not a new normal, which was, employees having to work from home until we could properly equip the annex to have people back in a group setting, socially distanced, much like you are today. So we went to that transition period.
So if I call 533-7300 tomorrow, someone will pick up the phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now, let me add the exception though. If we have an outage, right, and there are hundreds of people trying to call at the same time, we don't have hundreds of people waiting to take their phone calls, right? So the queue will get a little stacked up, correct, Franco?
That's correct. And Mondays are the busiest day of the week. So we typically get about 300 to 400 calls a day that come in to the customer service line. On Mondays, we're getting anywhere from 800, sometimes as many as 900 to 1,000 calls on a Monday. So call centers, I speak to the vendor every single day. They also went through some staffing challenges with COVID. They've just recently hired some more staff. So their wait times have come down. Their service levels have gotten better, but it's not anything new. It's something that's affecting all call centers, the industry as a whole, COVID. But this particular vendor is trying to work with us and get better. And obviously, if they're not performing, when their contract comes up for renewal, we'll put it out to bid and we'll get another vendor that can perform for us.
I'll also point out that this is something that we had done prior to COVID. What Franco came on board to help us do was improve these processes. And we went from being able to take phone calls 5 days a week during business hours. We now take phone calls with this call center provider 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Correct, Franco?
For customer service, that's correct, and 24 hours a day for outage line.
Right.
Where's the outage line on the website? Is there an outage line on the website? Because I looked for it the other day and I was having trouble finding
So
it.
blinking says report now, which is
Just
just a
that-
little box.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Commissioner Maliga has a question?
I just have a couple, and I'm gonna go quickly. So when we notified them of the assistance that was available to residents and the business owners, did we send out that information in Creole and Spanish? That's my first question. My second question is, are we waiving the late fees for anybody who is in the repayment plan if they do happen to miss that minimum payment? And the last thing is, my ask of the electric utility, being somebody who was raised very financially challenged and has spent many, many childhood days and nights without water or electric, is let's not disconnect people on a Friday so they have to go through the weekend. You know, if we can be mindful of making those unfortunate disconnections during the week where they have time to find the funding, get what we need to get in place to get them turned back on. That's my personal ask of you, because I don't think that any family should have to go through that, especially where we're getting ready to go into the summer.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So,
Commissioner
I'm
McBoy.
gonna let him answer.
Oh,
let me jump in and provide, we launched a massive outbound effort and literally upwards of the 6,000, 8,000 phone calls we made to customers who we saw that were in distress financially. And Franco will go into more detail. With respect to multiple languages, yes, we did do that. And during the pandemic, the late fees were waived. So we did not collect any late fees during the pandemic. And then that went.
Them now?
And Franco, what is the status of late fee now? I believe that we've resumed charging late fees. Was it at the end of the year?
October 1st, whenever the
Like that.
resolution was adopted by the previous commission body, everything went back to normal on October 1st.
So that would take another, act of the commission to make that change. Now, with respect to the disconnects, the history was that at the time, or back when there was no customer service function open on weekends and no way to make a payment on a weekend, no way to talk to a customer service rep on a phone over the weekend, we were not doing disconnects ahead of the weekend. However, some time ago, when we implemented all of these payment processes that allow you to make payments 7/24 anywhere in the country, whether it's credit card or walk in and paying cash, and the ability to talk to customer service 7 days a week, we did resume disconnects on Fridays, and the vast majority of customers are back on before Monday. So it works
so the
very, very.
staff available during the weekend, if somebody comes in on a Saturday morning and pays at CVS, their service will be turned on that day?
Yes. Yeah, that we have remote disconnect meters and both
Okay.
turn on, right? So the customer can be reconnected that same day. If it's not a remote disconnect meter, if it's a manual meter, then we will roll a trouble truck unless it's the absolute middle of the night, for example, after dark at 2 a.m. We're probably not going to go into to somebody's backyard to restore the power. We would wait till daylight hour to do that. But the vast majority of meters, probably 60+%, are remote disconnects, and those were put throughout the system some time ago. So the only way that we would maybe have to wait another day is if the issue was, for example, if it had been an abuse of service situation with a customer had experienced multiple tamperings of the meter or something unusual, where we had to resort to cutting the service at the pole, which is unusual, but it does happen. In that particular case, we'd have to wait till daytime till we can have somebody could go up to the pole and reconnect at the pole. But that's relatively rare. That's not very common. For the vast majority of the time, it's a remote keystroke operation that I believe the customer service folks can handle by phone. Is that correct, Franco?
That's correct. The call center has the ability to VPN into our system and do a remote reconnect with the customer on the phone. That's one of the advantages of one of the reasons why they were awarded the contract. They've got 30 years experience with electrical customers, municipalities across the country. And so the call center can actually take care of remote reconnects with the customer on the phone. Customer can go to CVS, 7-Eleven, make a payment on a Saturday, call in to the call center, and the call center can verify that the payment's been made and then reconnect the customer remotely.
What if they're one of the 40% that can't be done remotely?
Then the call center will create a work order ticket, which will go into our system operations team, and they'll dispatch a troubleman, which is on duty all weekend.
Thank you.
And Troublemen are on pretty 7/24. I'll also point out that we have a very, very lenient disconnect policy. We're actually about 11 or 12 days longer before we cut somebody off than the neighboring major investor-owned utility. So they're already at least 11 to 12 days beyond what any other utility would have let them go without a payment. So I think obviously we're not the most popular people in the world when we have to do this, and it's a terrible thing to have to do, but we go to a lot of steps before we finally get to the point where we have to disconnect somebody. And then when we do get them on the phone, it's amazing that almost everybody is back within 1, 2, or 3 days of being disconnected. And so part of the frustration is, if they could get back so quickly after being disconnected, please call us before you get disconnected and let's work something out, so we don't have to put you through the pain of the disconnection. So it's very frustrating to see. I mean, it's on one hand, it's good to see how quickly people come back and pay up, but why did you let it get to that point? Let's save ourselves this difficult emotional situation on both sides, and just call us if you need that help, so we don't have to take that step.
And if somebody calls ahead of time, we'll say, oh, I can't pay, but can you cut me some slack? I mean, do they work with them if that happens?
Yeah,
Michael?
absolutely. We work with them all the time on extensions, whatever they need. And one of the things that I do is try to be proactive. If a customer has been disconnected, I'll work with them and I'll try to find out what happened, right? Did they just forget? Did life happen? Did they get busy? I'll set them up for e-bill notification. I'll try to get them to sign up for auto pay if that works for their situation. If not, at least I'll get them to sign up for a text reminder or an email reminder, so that it'll help them not to miss that deadline.
I have one more question, and I have other lights on. When you turn off the electric, you also turn off the water.
No, so
The water stays on.
if they have both services, the electric gets cut first. If there's no response after 7 days, then a recheck or work order is created to go out and check the property again. If there's no one there, if there's no movement in our systems and our AMI systems, then we'll go ahead and do a final and disconnect the water and final the account.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McFoy has a question.
Yeah, a couple things. Ed mentioned that we have like 10 to 11 days longer than FP&L, other folks. And you mentioned that you try to avoid getting people to the cutoff. If you have those 10 to 11 extra days, that means at the beginning of the 10 days that there's a problem here. Why are we not proactively contacting people right at that point? That give them, that gets them a couple of days to figure out what they're going to do. In theory, we should never get in the situation of somebody being disconnected.
Well, they're getting a separate yellow notice.
Yeah.
As a reminder.
Yeah, that's correct. So we disconnect, Madam Mayor, if I may, we disconnect on the 42nd day, and the IOU that's in our territory here, they disconnect on the 31st day. So we're giving another 11 days of grace, and then we also mail out that yellow notice 7 days before, which most people don't. That's an extra added expense of postage, envelopes, and printing costs that we mail out. We mail out hundreds and hundreds of reminder notices every single day.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got several. Could we move from the printed expensive notices, move as much as possible of that, almost make it a requirement that people, when they sign up for electric, that they've got to provide a textable number, a callable number, and move it to that. That doesn't cost us anything. It's more likely to get their attention and avoid all the extra work of disconnecting and so on.
Madam Mayor, if I may, that is an excellent point, and we're actually working on that. It's part of our roadmap for customer service over the next year to automate a lot of these processes that are currently today very manual and very labor intensive and very costly. We are requiring an email address and a cell phone number with every new application that applies today. However, out of 27,000 customers, we currently only have about 11 or 12,000 email addresses in our database. And a lot of the phone numbers are old landlines that haven't been updated. So we are working proactively to get the customers to update their information. We've got some ideas in the works coming up here in the next year or less, but you're absolutely right. That is the way forward. That is the future, and that's the way to do it.
That's a frustration of many utilities in the country, that the information that the customers have provided us isn't updated by the customers. So they've changed their email address, or they've changed the phone number. We won't have it. And I think it's safe to say that every one of us has one or two cell phones, and we get telemarketers calling all the time. So just like us, customers are attuned to ignoring calls from people that they don't know who they are. So that just because we have an email or a phone number and it happens to be current, doesn't mean that they're actually going to answer it. So we're stuck in this loop of also sending these yellow notices. Before we actually closed the public access, it was amazing the number of people that were coming through the door holding a yellow notice, and the number of people that came through the door didn't have their bill at all, and may not even know whose name the bill was in, but they wanted to pay it because they thought they were going to get disconnected. So we have to keep multiple methods going, and as much as I would like to get rid of the mail, it's costing us probably $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, I bet, in postage and printing expenses. I'm not sure that we can actually get rid of it and without creating a problem, a bigger problem.
Good.
On the outages, and I think I raised this at one of the previous ones, because I think I saw it in the minutes, on the AMI stuff, which is what percentage of our meters, that's the automatic electronic reporting of the meters, so nobody comes to the door or to your yard and checks it. What percentage are on that of residential? Is it almost 100% or pretty close?
Effectively about 100%. I say about 100%. I'll give you the exceptions in a minute. Are on the AMI system. So 100% of residential, 100% of commercial accounts are on the AMI system, which gives us the ability to detect an outage, very, very quickly within a minute or two or three.
Right.
Having said that, there are probably one or two handfuls of customers who flat out refused to allow us to put these meters on their premises. That's a matter that we'll have to pursue legally.
What I'm focused on is the vast majority of our meters are AMI.
Absolutely.
Meaning that whether there's juice going to that house within minutes.
Absolutely.
So it seems to me that technically we could generate an outage map automatically. Some computer can be looking at those things, and I'm sure the systems exist, and tell you who's out, and also tell you which customers are out, not only the geographic map, but the actual accounts. So
as a matter of fact, we do that. That's how we operate. The operators have that panel.
Hold on a second. What I'm saying is we should not really be in the situation where customers are calling to say, hey, my power's out. There's no reason for that. You already know that. What we might want to be doing, if we're not already, is really push that, having the text or phone number connection to customers, and it automatically pushes a text out, says, hey, there's an outage in your area, expected time. The usual stuff that you put on the website that some people can get to through their phone, but push that out proactively rather than you guys having to deal with calls coming in.
Correct. So let me,
Number.
you're leading the witness here to some extent. So let me fill you in on the group on what we've done. So the first thing is we don't want the phone call, and we've been making it harder to find the phone number.
Yes, you have.
So because we already know that you have an outage. So calling us isn't necessarily going to do anything other than really overload the phone lines and get you frustrated because you can't get in. So you saw the outages. If we have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 customers out, and even if half of them decide to get on the phone, let's say now we have 500 to 1,000 people calling within 10 minutes. Well, big secret, we don't have that many people sitting there to take all those phone calls, right? So now they're frustrated because they can't get through. We already know you have an outage. You don't need to call us, right? Now, We prefer that you go online. Now you can say, well, I can't go online, but you can do it by cell phone. And the wonderful links that our webmaster Keith has put together some really, really good interactive stuff for keystrokes, really to tell us that you have an outage. And that way we'll know it electronically. The next piece, Commissioner Roy, you're 100% correct. The next piece is to be able to send you a message, because if we know you have an outage, and we know it because it's on the screen, we see it multiple ways. We see it on our SCADA system, and we know it on the AMI system, and we can quickly narrow down to where the point is that the outage probably occurred. But we want to be able to send you an outbound message as well. That requires us to have information on you in our customer information system. It also requires a customer information system that will speak to the AMI system and send that outbound message. Well, unfortunately, the customer information system is a part of our legacy system, Naviline, which does not have that capability. So we don't have the ability to do that without building new modules that will step aside from Naviline and operate to be able to do that. Technology that we have today, and I alluded to Franco working on technology projects for us, that's one of the things that he's working on, is the ability for us to get that customer information that says right away, we know you have an outage and help is on the way, and then periodically update it. Now, the outage maps that customers see on the website are updated based on pre-programmed routines that are in our systems that say, well, if this particular breaker is out, that includes all of these downstream customers, and it pushes that out to the outage map and populates the outage map. And it puts a default restoration time of 3 hours, not because we know exactly it's going to be 3 hours, but we know that most of our outages are cured in 3 hours, so we put 3 hours up. This is very typical in the industry. The other utilities around us do the same thing. And then as we get more information from the field, we'll update that estimate as to when people will be back. And then we provide a mid-outage estimate as well. But you're alluding to correctly, and I appreciate you bringing it up, because it helps us sell this when we bring you the need to invest in these technologies, the fact that we do need that. If we look at the numbers of phone calls that flood into the call center, the vast majority of those are not needed. We already know you have an outage, and it's just flooding the phone lines. And frankly, it's frustrating the customers to no end. And I'm sure you're hearing that, and you're reacting as a group to your constituents' concerns, which are absolutely fair and correct and valid. But we're trying to bring that technology in so that we can minimize those calls. Kind of a long-winded answer, which I'm prone to do, but I hope it gives you some appreciation that we're trying to get there. And it's going to require some significant investment in technology that we don't currently have.
I guess I'm puzzled on that, because I know firsthand that I can design a system at home, I've done it, that tells me when I'm running X amount of water faster than a certain rate, and it will send me a text message, and it's free. And the technologies and the APIs and all the stuff to do that there's nothing complicated, that technology. We should be able to do that. And I think if I'm hearing, 300 to 800 calls coming to the call center, most of those you don't need. Most of them are frustrating to all parties concerned. I think we could move much more actively to say, hey, look, if you agree to provide your contact information or phone number to the utility, you will get automatic texts whenever there's an outage. You will get automatic texts when you're coming up on your bill, if it's looking a little shaky, or if you've had a history that you had trouble with, you'll get them. Stuff where it's value added and good PR for the utility, and it avoids frustration both for customers and for the utility. Plus, it avoids a lot of cost, seems to me. And the technology, like I say, literally, it's free.
Well, the technology is not quite free, but it is readily available. We can buy it and implement it. So if we don't have to design it ourselves. What has to happen is that technology, once we select it, it now has to be installed. Well, it needs to get customer information out of Naviline, populate it, and then it needs to link to Tantalus and then have the outbound capability. It's not necessarily magic. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple. The problem getting Naviline, which is an antiquated system, to be able to provide that information to that new technology. Embedding all of that stuff and getting it to work is a sizable project that has to be budgeted and planned for. And we're stuck, a little bit stuck in terms of, are we going to be replacing the aged Naviline system? So do we wait until it's replaced? Or do we say, we're not going to wait until it's replaced, we're going to build a separate standalone piece and go with it? And that's the challenge. Identify the technology, who are the providers out there that have a tool that will speak to Naviline? And then we have to get Naviline to cooperate with us to do this. So we have, and I'm not trying to throw Naviline under the bus here by any stretch, but we have some very, very basic things that are very high priority for our IT department and finance department to get Naviline to adapt to, that we're struggling to get them to respond to in a timely fashion. So there's hurdles to go through, but you're right. Our frustration is that we know that technology exists, and we know that the lack of that technology is frustrating our customers and frustrating us, frankly, as you can tell by a little bit raised voice. But we're working towards that solution, and that's a project that's on Franco right now.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I may address Commissioner McVoy's question.
Sure.
So Commissioner McVoy, you are 100% correct that I've spent 20 plus years in private sector working on these projects for clients like AT&T in the call center industry. So I've done these projects, and I know I'm very familiar with API integration. We actually have a roadmap that we presented to the previous commission body on the automation. We have an automation project, which is 3 phases. So phase 1 will actually be rolling out this summer, which will include deploying or standing up outage management software, which will do exactly what you just said. It'll have an API integration into our AMI system. It'll automatically send out a text message or whatever information we have on the customer currently, automated phone call, text message, email, whenever Tantalus tells us there's an outage. We also will be able to then stand up an IVR, a hosted IVR solution just for the outage calls. So when a customer calls in to report an outage, we can ask them, would you like to provide a best contact phone number so we can notify you of future outages? And that IVR system will be able to punch in that phone number, store it, update it in the record, and now we have your information. So automation is out there. We're working on, as a matter of fact, next month, we'll be presenting to you for approval, software purchase for phase 1. And we can get that implemented this summer and hopefully have it up by September, October, based on, pending any delays. And then we've got a phase 2 project, and then we've got ultimately a phase 3 project. So we've got automation in the pipeline. We agree with everything you said. It's out there, it's available. It's just about budgeting it, implementing it, and getting it deployed. So we plan on doing that.
Thank you. You done?
That sounds great. And I'm very conscious, as you probably heard, of the PR aspects of our utility, that we really want to get it to be, people looking at it and say, wow, it's doing cool stuff. I think people can survive outages. They can survive various things if there's some, we're doing some of this and some of the frustration goes out. Thank you. Glad you're working on it.
Commissioner Stokes.
I just wanted to add that to one of the conversations earlier that we have all these new ways for customers to pay their bills and all of that stuff. So, and it's more convenient. I understand it's more hours, but I don't know that all the customers have caught up with us yet. And while I was here a couple of days ago, I actually had somebody show up at City Hall's door trying to pay their bill here. Because there's a beautiful picture of this building on the website.
Mhm.
So when it said City Hall Annex,
Right.
and I don't know what they were looking at, it showed a picture of this building, and it was confusing, but they said that they could pay their bill in a Dropbox.
Yeah.
So they can do a Dropbox at the City Hall Annex.
Mhm.
Okay, but then I think it was a picture of this building, so we might want to look into that. And just to make sure that our,
Or they could go to
Giving-
CVS.
right. And I was like, you can also go to like 7-Eleven. She's like, no, it's she was insisting that she's going to go in person and like drop her bill off somewhere. So I just think, with knowing that it might take a little while for our customers to catch up with where we are. And I agree with you. I would be very nervous to discontinue the actual physical yellow notices.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who have been in tough situations and they might change their phone number 2 or 3 times a year.
Right.
And so even it's not just the outdated landlines that are the problem, it's also these other, disposable phones or what have you that don't stay current. So I would hate for somebody to not get a yellow notice and get their power disconnected because we are sending it to an outdated phone number. I think that is pretty risky, but I do love all the possibilities of the new technology.
Commissioner
To that point, there is a Dropbox at the annex, not for cash though. We don't want anybody dropping cash in there, but they can drop off a check in a night deposit box type of setup. And that is still active and it is at the annex. And it's a good point you make that if the picture shows City Hall, that can be a little confusing. That's actually at the annex.
Commissioner Robinson.
Education is a challenge, and public, the service department has really stepped up. It indicates, it's an example of the difference between us and our own electric company and FP&L. I don't think has the personal contact that we have. The shutoffs are subjective in a lot of cases. Franco, I know you're doing everything you can, but they are subjective. So do you know the difference between a real shutoff and a shutoff that people are, I'm going to say, deadbeats and aren't going to pay anyhow, regardless of the COVID? I'm concerned, and the mayor's mentioned the water. I know there's a lag time and that's good, but if there is a subjective part of the shutoffs and they are shut off and you know the subjective part of it, is there any way to extend the water shutoff?
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Robinson, we have been working since October 1st, especially with water, because we believe it is a life safety issue, very, very closely with customers on a case-by-case basis. So I personally, they have my city cell phone number and customers call me directly all the time. And I welcome them because I'm here to help. That's my job. I'm here to serve them. And yes, you can't always tell when they're, making up a story, I think is what you're alluding to, versus whether it's true hardship. That's not for me to judge. My job is to help everyone the same way. So that's what I try to do every single day. And that's what my team strives to do as well.
It's a tough job making decisions like that. Does Navalon have a contract? What's the extension of their existence with us?
Madam Mayor, if I may answer, Navalon's on a year-to-year service contract, and to kind of bring this full circle, you're going to be challenged with having a conversation about the capital investment in ERP system. I know we've had conversations one-on-one. The utility component's one of many components to providing the technology that the organizations needed to check off the boxes of being able to engage the customers in a better way. And you'll hear a little bit about that and a checklist of many projects to talk about tonight in the workshop section. So,
I can hardly wait.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Reminding
much.
us gently that we have work to do.
a long list.
Don't put your shoes on yet. Okay, thank you very much.
We do have some more slides here on the payment plans to go.
Sure.
So we need to, let's see, we get the. Okay. Franco, I'll turn it back over to you here.
Yeah, so this next slide just gives you a high level overview of the amount of dollars, CARES Act dollars, that Palm Beach County Community Action has paid directly to the city of Lake Worth Beach on behalf of our utility customers. So it's almost $200,000 has been received by the city of Lake Worth Beach Utility Department on behalf of our customers since April 1st of 2020. They've assisted 454 Lake Worth Beach utility customers with anywhere from a maximum individual amount of $2,000 to as low as $27, and with an average assistance amount of $225. Now, from what I hear from a lot of customers that I speak to every day, the Palm Beach County Community Action, they're the ones that do the judgment, the oversight. They decide whether someone qualifies or not. But I hear it's a very strict application process. And what I mean by that is that they have to have documentation on every single member of the household, including pay stubs, social security cards, et cetera. So a lot of customers that I speak to say, I tried to apply for financial assistance. I just don't have all the documentation. What else can I do? So in that case, I'll work with them, put them in touch with a charity in Lake Worth Beach, whether it's a church charity or another charity, get them in touch, put them together. And sometimes they've been able to receive dollars from them. So that's just something to let you know that we are currently working on it, and we have received some financial assistance. Our customers have received some financial assistance. And then this is the customer outreach program that we ran during the moratorium from April to October. So this is where we repurposed, Ed decided to repurpose the conservation team that the electric utility has. It's 2 staff members that usually perform conservation audits. So during COVID-19, they couldn't go out to the home to do a conservation audit. So we repurposed them, worked together. We had meetings, developed a script. We received the flyers from Palm Beach County Community Action in both English, Spanish, and Creole. And they got on the phone and started doing outbound calls. They made a total of almost 9,000 calls during that period of time. As you can see there, they reached 3,400 voicemails. They spoke with 3,500 customers in person. They actually helped them to sign up if they qualified for the COVID-19 payment plan over the phone with the customer. A lot of customers said that, they would make a partial payment, or 60 of them said that they had already signed up for the payment plan. We also put out through the meter shop team, the field reps actually went out and hung 2,100 door hangers. So we really wanted to get the word out that dollars were available through the CARES Act, and financial assistance was available. We also mailed out those flyers in English, Spanish, and Creole, along with every single reminder notice for the entire summer, because we wanted everyone to have that information in all 3 languages. So we really tried to be as proactive as possible.
I think I really want to give a shout out to the folks that did this. So as Franco said, we did repurpose them. Their full-time job was energy conservation, and they were willing to take on this additional task because there wasn't much energy conservation work they could do other than starting to look at energy conservation in our own city buildings. But when you look at these 2 folks that made 8,667 calls, many of them from a cell phone, working at home or working here when we were able to bring them back into the building safely. That's a tremendous amount of time every single day. And a lot of these calls were also made on Saturdays, if I remember correctly, right, Franco?
Correct.
So these folks really went way above and beyond, very thankful. So I really want to stress this because sometimes the impression is that the utility just kind of sits back and waits for something to break or waits for somebody to call with a problem. This was an outbound proactive effort to get ahead of this and identify customers that were at risk and start calling them, in addition to the door hanger effort. It was a tremendous effort, and to get people onto these payment plans, to make them aware of the assistance that was available, and in many cases, actually coaching them through the filling out of the forms that had to go to the county, right, Franco? Personal assistance in helping them fill out these applications by phone is a tremendous effort. Okay.
The next slide is basically a look at our aging report. So as you can tell from right to left, we started with a baseline number of April 2019. It takes a look at our 30-day number and then our 60-day number added together in that far right column for April of 2019. It looks at our total commercial electric accounts on the top column, and then it goes down to total residential electric accounts, and it combines the 2 in the third line, and then at the 4th line, we're looking at total water and sewer, and then the last line is grand total. So we had a baseline of about 4% April of 2019. During April of 2020, we spiked up to almost 12% of our customers were behind in their payments from an aging perspective. And now fast forward to April of 2021, we're back down to about 7% grand total for all 3, electric, water, and sewer. And this is something that Ed likes to refer to as a leading indicator. And we look at this, at our staff meetings on a bi-weekly basis all the time. We're monitoring it to make sure that the numbers are not going up, but they're coming down, and we're helping as many customers to get back on track and get paid up and get caught up.
Interestingly enough, the 30-day number in Lake Worth, it is historically been high. Many people pay late on a regular basis, and then fewer are more than 60 days late. Once they get out well beyond that, and there's no action, then we know that they're probably headed to in a collection environment. But as Franco said, this is something that we had put together. The billing team had to really work hard to extract this information to put it in this format. This 6% is 6.9% of revenues, right? Not 6.9% of customers, correct, Franco?
That's correct. Dollars, yes.
Right. So we're running about 6.9% of our revenues are 30 days or more, 30 plus 60 days or more in arrears. So that's up somewhat from where it was before COVID really hit us. Collections is what happens once they fall off of that report, meaning that the account has been finalized. The customer is no longer a customer. There's no action on no activity at the property. And now we're basically left with a bill and they're in the wind. They're gone. And this is the history. I'll let Franco walk you through how that happens.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this slide talks about collections. Collections happens after the account has been final billed. The deposit that's on hand has been deducted from their final bill. And if there's a balance remaining, that amount is sent as a file over to our third-party collection agency. And then they start their soft collection process as far as trying to get them to pay this outstanding debt. The vendor that we're using on average is collecting about 12% of the amount that we send over to them for collections. And as you can tell, 2019, we were at $235,000 in outstanding collection amount. 2020, we jumped up to 367. We're keeping an eye on it in 2021. Every month we look at it to see if we're trending up or down or if it's staying flat. So we will continue to bring this information to you when we meet.
So to put some of this in perspective, these are fees that we were not able to collect for services that we rendered. So whether it's water or electric, we actually bought the product, delivered it to the customer, and never got paid for it. You can take any one of those numbers on the right, divide it by the typical number of customers, let's say 27,000 customers, and you can see quickly that $10 to $13 per year of every customer's bill is these revenues that we were not able to collect. And ultimately, when we put together our budgets, we're counting on that revenue coming in, right? We provided the service and we're counting on it coming in. So there's the equivalent of $10, $13+ per year effectively built into people's bills that cover what ultimately went out for collections. Very, very small amount of what goes out for collections is ever recovered. It's just very hard to get that money back.
Commissioner Maliga has a question.
Thank you. I guess this question would be for Ed as well as our finance department. That 88% that we send to collections, I hope we are writing that off every year as uncollectible bad debt. Or are we turning around and selling that debt to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar? Because we should be doing one or the other.
I know Bruce, I'm pretty sure Bruce is in the background, but I'll jump in with a part of the answer until Bruce chimes in. But I'm not aware that we're selling our debt. We have not declared it as revenue. We show revenue in our financials as paid when paid. So it's basically revenue that we did not collect. Now, it may be a balance sheet item, and that's where I get a little bit out of my sandbox. And I look to Bruce if he's on the phone to chime in with additional detail.
Yes, thank you, Ed. Bruce Miller, for the record. Madam Mayor, we do write off receivables on a primarily on an annual basis. It's something that we have to do for this fiscal year as I look back to the prior year, because we don't know what's going to be collected through the process that Ed just provided, and being it the COVID related, we were giving it a little bit more time.
So does that mean that we didn't write off 19s and 20 and now we need to go back 2 years?
I believe we have to go back to 19, yes.
So we're looking at a possible $600,000 technically of a write-off.
It's not going to hit the income, it's going to hit the receivables.
Correct. So I just want to make sure we don't miss that.
Right, no,
Thank
yeah, yes, ma'am.
Do you
Thank you
have-
guys for all your hard work. No, it's great to see that the numbers have gone down on the aging report, but I just want to make sure that we didn't miss that
Sure.
that segue.
And
Thank
you're
you
like,
guys for your time.
Madam Mayor,
yes,
if I may just add on the unpaid debt for property owners that don't pay their utility bills, the city has a lien on the property. So in addition to collection efforts, as property exchanges hands, we do recover some of those unpaid amounts through that lien process. So that's an ongoing thing, and those liens really continue to exist until paid. So that's another way that the city does recover some of this revenue.
I have a question, Ms. Godot. If I'm a landlord, my tenant has, walks away with an unpaid bill. Do I have to pay that bill before I can rent it, just before I can get that service turned back on?
There is a statute directly on point, and if the city is aware that it is a tenant, that the account is in the tenant's name, or we're aware that it's a tenant that's using that utility, by law, we cannot lien the property. So you as the landlord would not legally be responsible for that bad debt that the tenant walks out on. Now, keep in mind, though, that utility customer service keeps track of those tenants that walk out on the bill. And if they come back to the city to sign up for another account at a different property, they will remind that person that they have an unpaid bill at another location.
Gently remind them.
Exactly, of course. But we cannot go legally, we cannot go after the landlord in that situation.
Good, thank you.
If I can add a little bit more to that. So a tenant who has a history of non-payment, who left us with an unpaid bill, would not be able to open a new account
Right.
until they paid that prior bill.
Right.
If the account was in the name of the landlord could not open new accounts until that bill was paid.
Sure.
We haven't looked at this percentage, but I'm going to give you a percentage which I think is very telling. We haven't updated this number in a while, but about 85%, in the range of 80 to 85% of the amounts that go out for collection are residential tenants.
Right.
And so one of the questions and the great frustration to many is, well, what about their deposit? And what we found over time is that the residential tenants, the deposits may be much lower than their potential exposure, or the deposit may have been returned to them as per our deposit policy at some point in the past. And now they're into us before we get them cut and disconnected. And then we have there's no deposit, no backup, and then they're gone. So that's an exposure that we have, and we'll be talking to you more about that with some thoughts on how we can mitigate that. But we're currently operating within the deposit policy, and it allows this to happen.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner
Can
Maliga
we
has.
place those on their credit report, such as FPL would do?
I'm not familiar with that answer. I have to look to Franco to see how does that show up, Franco.
That is correct. So as soon as we send the file to the collection agency, they take care of that.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. I know I have learned a lot tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Is that the conclusion of your presentation?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think we all appreciate the work that you put into that. Very good. Madam Clerk, are there any public comment cards or comments? to be
There are
read?
not. There are not, Madam Mayor.
Okay, the next is the approval of the minutes of March 30th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
By Commissioner Maliga. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner McVoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we have a consent agenda. Next is approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion
Motion to approve.
by Commissioner Robinson? Do I have a second?
Second.
By Commissioner McVoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we're moving on to new business. Item A. Get back in our books.
Yes, Madam Mayor, at liberty, if I may, provide a.
Sure. Thank
You
you.
all you all have the staff report. This is the task order with Power Engineers to do the engineering and design for a new 8-bay substation at Canal. So what does all of that mean? Our Canal station to the west, which is also where the new tie line will come into, has a 26 kV substation. So we take 26,000 volts, 26 kV into what we call a substation. And we then distribute it from there at various voltages to our customers that are served in that area, thousands and thousands of customers. That is quite an old substation. It has a number of design deficiencies and is not one that we want to continue with. So this was a project that was identified as a part of the SHRIP project, the System Hardening Reliability Improvement. And this particular request is for Power Engineers to do the engineering and design of that substation. Now, to separate this in folks' minds, at Canal, we also have a 138 kV or 138 kV switch yard. Some people refer to it as substation, but it's a switch yard / substation. That's at 138,000 volts. Power Engineers is also doing the design of that particular substation. Just a few feet away will be this new 26 kV substation, which will be built and they'll be interconnected electrically. But they're actually two separate projects. I know Commissioner McVoy really drilled down in great detail with me on this. We separated the two from an accounting point of view so we understand what the cost is for the substation at 26 kV, 8-bay, and what the 138 kV station is. They're two separate projects, two separate engineering efforts. Even though the same company is doing it, there are some economies between the two in terms of not intellectual property, but understanding exactly what's being built where so that the interferences are understood and designed around properly. 8-bay simply means that there are 8 major circuits which will emanate from this station. And that's what that refers to. You'll see us use that term in many of the projects that we'll bring to you. Some substations are what we refer to as a 4-bay. The vast majority will be 8-bay. That's why you hear that term. So these dollars are for the engineering and design work, and also any engineering that might need to be done, construction clarifications, update to drawings, what we call as-built drawings as the project is built, and being available to provide answers and direction to the construction team. We're not yet at the construction part. First, we have to do design, and then we'll come back to you with a request for approval of a construction contract at that time. This is just to get the engineering done.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay. Madam Clerk, are there any public comment cards on this issue?
There are not, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion,
Motion to do what?
approve.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You just don't have to move. And what's the second? Second from Commissioner Robinson. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. By Commissioner Stokes. McVoy made the motion. Stokes seconded. Oh, I'm sorry. It was, I apologize to Commissioner Robinson. It was his motion.
Serious mistake there.
I know. Well, you guys all look. So
Moving right along.
not my most politically correct. I'm sorry.
You gonna break for a minute?
Want to take a 5-minute break?
Did we vote?
Did we vote? Are we adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Madam Clerk, I think we're going to take a 5 to 7 minute break.
Sounds good to me.
Thank
All
you.
right.
We'll be back. We'll be back. I would like to plug my phone in. Are you juiced up enough?
Yeah, I should be.
Okay.
Keith, it looks like everybody's back.
Okay, we are back live.
Madam Mayor, it's 7:34 and we are live.
Keith, you may need to unmute the commission.
Good
Is there
evening.
anyone? Okay, we're good.
Very good. Yes. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the April 27th, 2021 work session to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Betty Resch,
Here.
Vice Mayor Herman Robinson,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga,
Here.
Commissioner Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Kimberly Stokes.
Here.
Well, that's good. Is there, item A, let's see. Is there a presentation from staff?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Let's have it.
If I may, Madam Mayor,
Please do.
again, for the record, City Manager Juan Ruiz. And thank you again for allowing us to bring forward a bunch of information, which will be one of many workshops. And as we've all taught in the last several weeks, as you get your feet planted here firmly, you know, with everything that's going on, there's a lot to discuss. And tonight we're going to touch on three very specific projects or topics. One being our 5-year CIP overview. And then secondly, our really popular topic is the sales tax, use of sales tax. And then finally, William Waters will join us to go over a very high level strategic plan process. These conversations are extremely important as we ramp up and lead into our first budget workshop, June 3rd. And then we also have another follow-up workshop scheduled for May 6th. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Bruce Miller, our Finance Director, and we'll walk through the presentations. And we can take questions as we go, or we can take questions at the end. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, thank you very much for coming here. We have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, but you're going to have that distinct pleasure soon when I come to you as a fourth grader who's bad at math.
Well, I look forward to that conversation.
It's going to be a challenge.
Bruce Miller, Finance Director for the record. So as Lon said, we're starting the budget process here pretty soon. And there's a lot of information that we'll have to go through. So I think the first step is to provide you just a very broad overview of the capital and how we do the capital program and how we got to these numbers, so to speak. It's a 5-year capital improvement plan. The first year of the plan each year is the appropriation amount, which is critical because that's what you approve as a budget, part of the budget. And then the rolling 4 years thereafter are for planning purposes. Those funds have not been legally appropriated and authorized expenditures. So what you see here is just a 2-page document that provides all the different requests by fund. And underneath of that, there's each specific request, project request, and also it identifies the funding sources, be it the sales tax, for example, or a utility bond, or from fund balance, from current revenues, so that we have a pretty good idea of how, if that project is recommended for funding, how it's going to be paid for. So as you see here, this is just a summary format. So we begin with the general fund and the components of the general, be it general government, the library, leisure services. And you see going out left to right, the totals for each, and then the cumulative.
Excuse me, is this the first year of the 5-year plan? Is that what's happening?
Yes, this is for fiscal year 21.
Okay.
Through 25.
Okay.
Okay. And then the submission that will be provided to you
as part of the fiscal year 22 budget. It will be the 22 through 26.
Okay, thank
So
you.
It rolls forward each year. We started, I said, should restarted this process about 2 years ago in earnest, when we took a comprehensive list. Juan provided that oversight, and we took all that information, all those projects, and provided the program sheets. I don't know if you've had the opportunity, but we have a program sheet that goes with each individual project, so that there's a little bit more detail than just, for example, improvements or whatever specific.
Mr. Bruce, would that be this packet one right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, making sure I'm not expecting more trees.
You.
So, yeah, it's wonderful reading.
It's
I recommend it.
seeing impaired.
Then we go into the beach fund, the golf fund, the garage fund, the IT fund, and the neighborhood road fund. So these are all general government activities. And if you flip the page, we get into the utility funds. The utility funds, being the rec fund, water fund, local sewer, stormwater, sanitation, and then the regional sewer also. A combined utility amount. I can go in more detail if you would like, but you know, I just wanted to give you a general overview of how CIP works.
Okay, so I'm going to ask some very basic questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if there's a request, that means a department has requested that money for this year.
Yes, it will make a request. If you can hear me, if you can go to the other tab at the bottom, where it's not just the summary. The tab all the way at the bottom on the right. I mean, on the left, if you can hear me. No, you're going the wrong way. Don't scroll down.
I think you want the one that says all funds detail?
Yes, please. Thank you. And if you would scroll all the way to the left, the column C or D.
Oh, this is the much more detailed.
Yes.
Okay,
So you can see the detail that goes into
okay.
all these different projects.
And we'll get a copy of that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sarah's already got hers.
But can we get an electronic? Because right now, I think in this,
Oh,
we
I-
just have the summary.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't think he's asking us to really understand that now. I think he's just showing us that that's what's we can get when we, okay.
Like, when we submit the capital budget for fiscal year 22,
Mhm.
it's going to be formatted just like this, but rather than the first year being 21, fiscal year 21, the first year will be 22, and then 4 years thereafter.
So what Commissioner Maliga has, we should get probably fairly soon so that we can look at it.
I
Is that what we
will-
got last week?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Is that what we got last week?
Yeah, this was what we got last week. And
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So we have it.
we got it.
So if you don't have it, I'm
Okay.
more than happy to provide it. It's on several different drives.
Make sure to get you guys all hard copies.
I don't need another hard copy.
No hard copy. That's why we stopped printing.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question,
Yes,
Mr. Bruce?
ma'am.
On, I don't know, sheet 5 of 30 starts something that I'm not familiar with. There's a column that reads cumulative request. Explain to me in layman term what that means.
It's just the additive.
So, but I'm only on this one. So this is going to tell me the total for the 5 years
Yes, ma'am.
for each of these projects. So some of them that there's a slash, but there was a request on the first page. What happened to that?
Can you give me, are you looking at, oh, you're looking at the more detailed.
So like on page 1 of 30, I'm just looking at, let's just pick one, right? So under police, elevator, police, fire, admin, $150,000. But then when I come to this report, there's a slash there, like, okay, like the money just appeared and came in and came out.
Because that was funded in fiscal year 20.
So it's not gonna show up in the cumulative year then?
No, because it's just that 5-year, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. If it was funded in 20,
So this is only for things that are fully funded?
yes.
Okay,
And then we'll have to do a better job in that as projects roll off and been funded, the column on the far left doesn't disappear, it just stays there. So we'll do a better job eliminating rows that no longer apply because it's been funded or
well, and the reason I'm asking is just because one of them, is the Howard Park project, which I know that half of the money came from CDBG funds. So shouldn't that go under grant for all this leisure services? Shouldn't that show CDBG money covering these projects?
yes. But again, this was point in time for adoption last year. I haven't rolled it forward for any activity for fiscal year 22. So if there was a change of funding sources during fiscal year 22, I would not have captured that in this.
You mean 2021, during 2021?
It's 21 for 22, right? For the roll forward of 22.
And again, I'm trying to wrap my head around this because again, we're newbies, right?
Yes.
So I don't want to have to go back through every single minute and know which I funded and what I haven't and where the funds are coming from. And I know it's a lot to ask, is there any way, because we have made some of these decisions already in regards to where the funding's coming from. And I know some of it's match money and some of these projects are short. It's a $580,000 project and we're only getting 286.
Right.
But I personally, just for me to be fiscally responsible, would like to see, especially because I'm looking at things that say fiscal year 2020 and I'm in 2021, I would like to see those grant dollars filled in to know what we've received coming in.
That was intended, honestly, to be part of the presentation for the budget for fiscal year 22.
Okay, so in the next couple months,
coming.
all of that caught up?
Right.
Okay, perfect.
So that,
Because I'm like, I'm never going to get to sleep if I have to read minutes and add all this.
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Thank you.
just to clarify and to settle, it is a screenshot in the point certain time looking back, coming forward. But prior to the June 3rd first workshop, when we really started to deep dive into prep for FY20 and out years, whether it's operating or CIP, everything will be brought up current. Howard Park is a perfect example that screenshot backwards.
Right.
We weren't quite sure about funding sources. It gets captured and then you roll forward. Oh, by the way, we got CDBG now. And then we start to realign the pieces
Okay,
more accurately
that'll be in the months coming.
today. Correct.
Because I was like, if I have to go back and read minutes and figure this out,
Yeah, no.
I quit. I'm out of here.
Remember,
That's having this conversation.
It's very high
Don't do
level, very 20,000 foot and just kind of start preparing you
Okay,
for what's.
This is
coming.
more general.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
very general.
thank you for
because
easing my mind. I can breathe. Appreciate it.
we would have the same anxiety.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Madam Mayor, if I may continue, ARPA again can change the
Right.
complexity of what the 5-year outlook looks like
Right.
as well. So,
Right.
finally, for once, we have some pots of money
To move stuff
really
in.
deep
read-
dive into some
read-
capital planning.
Yeah.
And do we have a workshop for the ARPA money scheduled yet?
Not quite yet, because we're waiting for Washington to give us some clarity on what it is and where we can go with the pots of money. So, time is spinning, but we definitely didn't want to bring forward information to talk about what we all know is current. And it's just quite not enough to say, this pot can go here, this pot can go there.
Yeah, I listened to a National League of Cities webinar the other day and
Yeah,
they're like, oh, we don't really know. So, I mean, it was not that helpful, actually.
it's a weekly ask at our county emergency meetings where all the municipalities get together. We participate on Wednesdays and it's any update on ARPA, any update on ARPA.
Right.
And as soon as we get the information, we'll be cooking a workshop up and coming forward because I know we're all anxious
We are.
to start aligning resources with some direction.
With needs.
I don't know if it's
Yeah.
additional good information, but talked to people in Washington today
Mhm.
regarding treasuries. They didn't have really good news. They're looking at it another month out before a month out
Okay,
for guidance.
great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Most of these seem pretty self-explanatory to me, but can you just clarify what the garage fund is used for?
Well, the garage fund, the $500,000.
Yeah,
That's replacement of vehicles,
trucks, stuff.
large rolling stock.
Okay.
Be it And each fund, depending upon what they use, is a different amount of money into that program. So, for example, the utilities will pay a larger amount because of equipment, that type of thing. Whereas general government, the vehicles that we use aren't that expensive. So again, depending upon what you're using, you'll pay a different allocation.
We have a formula, whether it's half ton, 3/4 ton, 1 ton.
And the bigger ones are more expensive. Thank you.
Ding.
And the maintenance is more expensive. So.
Sure. Commissioner Robinson has a question.
And I'm going to ask about how in-depth we look at leasing and outsourcing for those expenses.
Yeah, I'll take it, Bruce. Commissioner, Madam Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
We are in a constant analysis mode of looking at what's the best and most fiscal, prudent way to go about. And leasing fleet vehicles versus owning fleet vehicles is a conversation that goes on almost monthly, especially amongst public works. We have the refuse, we're in the business of trucks. At Liberty comes from a world where a lot of leasing is pretty common thing. And it's something we're going to be exploring in FY22 to make sure we're getting the most car for the buck.
Yeah, because I see some citizens, some workers driving around in like lovely pickup trucks, but I don't think that their job really includes schlepping stuff.
Right.
So, maybe we could tone down some of that stuff.
Yeah, and as we push the organization toward more electric, you start to see the fleet kind of turn over. But, just keep in mind, we are in several different types of businesses, whether it's electric utility that require, armed trucks, refuse and whatnot. But there's definitely a lot of thought and fiscal strategizing on trying to maximize and stretch the dollar for sure.
Yeah, I'd like to see some smaller vehicles for some of the staff that are really not carrying stuff around.
We're trying to get away from the passenger or the pickup truck when it's not needed and go more to a 2-door.
Yeah.
You see the EV cars now that are being invested in, yay. And go ahead. And it's the path for us for the future.
Thank you.
So that pretty wraps up the capital side. If you want to jump into the.
That would be number 2.
Can I ask one more question about the capital improvement? We're talking about $75,000 ask for library. And in comparison to 450 for leisure services. And then at the end of 5 years, it's 2 million versus 75 again. What's happening there?
I don't understand your question.
Again, that would be more on the detail sheet.
Give me the answer.
Just
you probably memorized it. Yeah.
Sure.
But just because I'm very familiar with both of those departments or that department, and what you're going to notice is on these numbers here, it'll tie back to sales tax monies commitments that were made by the previous commission through a CIP through our CIP program, and we'll get into that in this next presentation. Library upgrades include a lot of the painting and the stucco work that was done there, the bathroom upgrades or renovations. Leisure, it can combine anything from playground upgrades up to investing in the beach as far as a casino with, it could be HVAC replacement, it could be generator installation. So you'll see different amounts over a 5-year period because there's different needs in the different types of business centers that we operate in. Leisure, can encompass a ton of parks, and it can range from park playground replacements to athletic side replacement. So you're going to see some numbers under leisure services that will tend to be a little bit larger than just say the library. And again, the staff brings forward projects based on need, whether it's life safety, we go through this whole process that you're going to deep dive into very shortly. And it'll explain it. It'll make sense.
Okay. Thank you.
I think I'll be calling in sick that week.
I don't have a vacation.
Sorry. And just to calm a little bit of the anxiety, the operating budget conversation, it's handled aside and apart from the capital conversation.
Right.
Because the capital is such a big commitment in itself.
Mhm.
So don't think you're going to be literally, drinking from a fire hydrant trying to figure out a $200 million operating budget that includes a capital budget. that now we are lucky to have some resources to talk about.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned, we got our through binders with it, and it started with 2021, and I think I asked Mike, it would be very helpful for us to have it from the year before so that we know what 2020 looks like before we need to compare it to 2021.
We'll have a 4-year history.
Okay.
We'll start in 6.
With
and
quiz.
the spreadsheet starts.
What?
With quiz.
Quiz, for the quiz.
Yeah, it'll actually show actuals. It'll show forecasted, projected, and it'll carry you through a snapshot that looks backwards and a little bit forward.
Because it's interesting, I'm looking at for leisure services, in 2022, it's 425, and then it goes up in 2024, 760. Is that something you've anticipated is going to happen in 2024?
Yes, and that's looking at age of equipment.
Oh, okay, that's-
Take for instance, a playground out in the sun has life expectancy, typically 10 to 12 years.
Right,
Here, it might be 5 to 6, especially if it's on the beach.
right.
Wink.
Or 1 or 2.
So staff takes time to look at, when does this piece of equipment need to be replaced?
All right, thank you. That answers my question.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks.
If I can chime in from an electric point of view, because obviously, if you look at the numbers, it doesn't take a lot to figure out that the electric's got the biggest piece there. So I'll drop a couple of cents in on that. The numbers that you see here again are capital, as Juan and Bruce pointed out, and capital is raised largely through debt. So with the other side of this, as Juan mentioned, is the operating budget. So the operating budget has in it the debt service on the capital that you see here.
Okay.
So this is all in balance. So our operating budgets are sufficient to cover the operations in addition to covering the debt service associated with the capital that you see here. And when we get further down the road, Bruce will be taking you through actually, when we Stantec models, we'll be looking 10 years forward. So it's all taken into account. So you should not, for example, look at these dollars and say, how do we pay for this out of revenue? Well, in electric utilities case, it's financed, and the debt service on this capital is paid out of revenues. And we're in good shape at as recently as the financing effort. Bruce's team put a lot of effort into this to show the financial community that our coverage ratios were such that we could accommodate the level of debt that was needed to execute the capital program that you see here.
How's our bond rating these days? We're good, right?
Very, very good.
That's what I thought.
A minus one?
Yeah.
No,
A minus?
Quite honestly, a couple of years ago, it was difficult to get funding, any kind of.
Right.
Yes. We went to Bank of America and they said, thank you, but no, thank you. So we spent a good 2 years. That was when I first got here. So we spent two years working on the finances of the city and putting things in better position.
Okay.
And then we were able to go with our financial advisors' help and Ed's help and a lot of people's efforts, we were able to go to the credit agencies, Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And we received good credit.
Who's our bond counsel now? Is it not
Bond
Rick?
counsel is still Mark,
Rick Miller?
no, Mark Mushkin, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And our financial advisors are Davenport. Very
Thank you.
good group.
Okay.
We talking to them a lot
No doubt.
because we have lots to talk about.
Bring the bagels.
Yes.
And just to clarify one point, Madam Mayor, if I can, to Ed's comments, and I appreciate that, Ed, a little bit different on general government side. Unlike in years past, the city now has the ability to have some resources available through this a pot of sales tax money and the ARPA money.
Mhm.
So when we say, acquiring debt to create, revenue to fund projects, the general government side functions just, I hear a bit different. Because you're not necessarily acquiring debt service, because we got a windfall, whether it was from Washington through ARPA or through the county from the sales tax proceeds. So that's a little bit different, but we'll get into the weeds, come June, and really get into getting everybody up to speed on how these different machineries work.
Thank you. You have your work cut out for you.
Well, I
We all
can't
do.
wait until we start talking about bonds themselves. and
Yeah.
The information that will flow from there.
Okay.
But so if I may.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so the next presentation is the discretionary sales tax. And what I'm hoping to do is identify what the estimated revenues were, what the projects that we have gone out and committed to and completed, and then the remaining balances, if you will, and what's available and what is basically has been identified for future year CIP purposes. So with that, if you turn to page 2, thank you. The estimated revenue is right now $21,040,000
That's over 10 years.
over 10 years. Yes, ma'am. It was a little north of $22 million, but based on the collections that we received last year for periods after March, it really went down by about $1 million for the fiscal year. So adding, if you will, 10% on fiscal year 20s, fiscal years 20s collections, and add 10% each year for the recovery, we're back up to about $21 million. The experts, if you will, say that we should snap back pretty quickly. So the 10% over the remaining 5 years is conservative. If that's the case, great. But I'd rather have a conservative number versus overly aggressive. So we'll monitor that as we go through. So the commitments, and there are slides for each one of these categories further behind. So we'll get to that later on. So we, as of September 30th, 20, we had $6 million worth of commitments, leaving us an available balance of about $15 million. The conversation at the time was, especially with the COVID slowdown, we could not do enough projects with the cash flow. So we did a revenue bond where we committed the future revenues of the sales tax to pay back the $5 million. We borrowed $5.1 million for specific projects. And again, there's a slides that will speak to that, what those are. And then the interest costs associated with that cannot be paid back through the discretionary sales tax, which I apologize for, I included in an earlier slide, but the debt service cannot be used for that purpose. So that's where you see debt service interest not allowed. So after that, those funds, if you will, the $5.1 million are committed, they're restricted for the payment of debt service. So after that, we have about $9.9 million of available funds. There's $2.7 million of identified projects. And then after we take out the pool for $6 million, you're left with about $1.1 million of potential earmarking for future projects.
Okay, I'm going to stop you again because I am really new at this stuff.
Okay.
Sarah is our financial person. I'm looking at the page that we have and I'm looking at the screen and they're two different numbers. It's a bunch of different numbers.
Yeah, we need the initial presentation of the sales tax that was provided in the 3-ring binder. We've discarded it. And the new one that was printed out is the one that should.
Oh, got it.
Everything was.
Thank you.
Fluid.
Sorry about that. Much.
Yeah.
I told you I'm not good at
Was a
this.
reference to the initial document that went out, and we apologize, but after closely looking at it, it was prudent that we take the right figures out.
And when you mentioned about the pool, the $6 million for the pool, is that still committed to the pool? I mean, when we say committed, my understanding is the money hasn't come in yet. And so it's a commitment, it's kind of a virtual thing at this point.
Money has not, I'll let you speak. The money has not come in. It's future revenues, if you will. And it was part of the discussion. And with that.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
And Madam Mayor, if I may just add, for 30, and that's a good question. And again, there's a lot of history in surrounding sales tax and specifically the pool. And the most recent, right up until we had to change it, commission was, set aside, committed to a pool, and we can go back and look at the audio was, I think it came out to a 3-2 vote for a future discussion to put aside $6 million and what that's going to look like, where it's going to be spent.
Right.
Now is up to us. So.
And if I may, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
If I may, and this has been a challenge. There are two types of actions, if you will. There's an appropriation, and you'll hear me speak to appropriations. And it has a specific meaning, and that's the legal authority to spend funds. And it has to be a vote. And it's part of the budget process or a supplemental budget request. But it needs to have a majority vote to expend funds. If I don't have that, regardless if it was discussed or.
Right. It's talk.
Yes.
Okay.
So in this conversation, just by example, there was conversation that $6 million was set aside. But that doesn't mean without the appropriation, it can be used for any purpose.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I see a couple questions, Commissioner McBoy and Commissioner Stokes.
The concern I have is procedural. I had the same one that the mayor had, that I'm looking at the backup that I downloaded sometime this afternoon, and it's not matching what I'm seeing on the screen and not matching this. We can catch up, but the whole point of backup is for the public to also be able to see what we're doing. And it does concern me that as late as mid-afternoon today, or maybe even a little later, I forget what time I downloaded it, I wasn't getting this, I was getting what we're not using.
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may, Commissioner McBoy, it is, yes, it's not acceptable. And we have to do better to get the right data out in a timely fashion. Because again, especially when it's sales tax, and even if it's not sales tax, it's crucially important that the public feels engaged, they have the right set of information because it builds trust.
Yep.
And we got to do a better job of that. And I want to make sure, at least for the purpose of this conversation, that we're all working off the same platform.
So this is the latest.
Hard copy.
Correct.
Right.
But can we then make sure that what's on the website?
We'll replace it immediately. Yes.
And some sort of an indication, you know, that happened, because otherwise people.
Yeah, my staff's listening and they're probably already in the motion of putting in the right document, upload it into the backup, or making a revision so that tomorrow somebody wakes up, missed the meeting, they can go on and download the packet and they get the right information. We'll make that correction and we'll reduce those.
The other place that it's important is that I'm shifting over at staff's encouragement and my blessing to do things electronically. And I prepare for the meeting and I didn't have this piece.
Yeah.
Well, none of us,
Neither did we.
none of us did.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not good.
Well, they said it. They made it.
understood.
Not good.
But I like it.
Well, I'm glad that we have the correct information. So I'm gonna go through and say that, you know, some of the slides are exactly the same.
Right.
I think the most important thing is for people who are listening to realize that the numbers match. It's just they've been broken down a lot more intense on what's in front of us now versus instead of just clumping stuff and saying this project, now it's literally broken down into pennies and cents and dollars.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, the summary sheet, page 1, and let's be honest,
This one?
everyone's eyes is going to go, how much is left, right? And I think that's the topic of the public's interest is, you know, it's the beach, we'll call it in the $6 million conversation. And we want to make sure that that was captured correctly and appropriately. And again, Commissioner McBoy, we have to do better.
And when it says what has been approved, does that mean it's been spent or is that appropriate?
Spent, approved by the previous.
Well, that's,
And we'll walk you through the slides. It'll all tie in.
I had a couple questions just
oh, yeah.
from a general thing here. I just want to get my head around it. So we've estimated throughout over the 10 years, we get about $21 million. How much have we actually received? Is that anywhere in here?
We have received a little bit, about $9.8 million. I believe.
Okay, so that here,
It says right here, available balance 9.8.
right,
Yeah.
so, but we've spent that.
We have spent so far, we've committed to prior projects, $6 million.
Okay,
About $4
That's what has been
million
approved.
has been expended. over $2 million, which is a Park of Commerce project, has not been expended.
For this, I just want to be clear with all the terminology. So for the second line under commitments as of 9/2020, that's not just saying, oh, I want this money for the pool. Those are things that the previous commission has voted on that we cannot change. Those things are set in motion,
Yeah.
done.
But the 6 million, like, for example, the $6 million to the pool has not been
Right. That's
set in stone.
And then this $5 million.
Been committed.
Right, that's,
Been discussed.
5.1 million.
well, I think there was a,
Well, there's like a technical way that you can maybe interpret the word commitment, and then there's like a more lingo way. You might be, oh, we committed $6 million to a pool, but technically they didn't. Right? But in a casual conversation, you might,
well, there's no.
Earmarked it.
right,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so then the $5.5 million. Is that all stuff that is set in stone?
That's very much set in stone.
Okay,
That is, if just to add a little bit more background, that's money that we've borrowed, that we spoke to before, and we have to pay that money back. So, and that money is coming back through the sales tax revenues. It's been, sales tax revenues has been pledged basically to pay that back.
okay, and then there's a little breakdown what that $5 million is later. Okay,
To further clarify, not to keep the conversation going, right?
Sure.
It's, we borrowed against future money.
Right.
Instead of waiting, because in the beginning, this goes back to 2017, the commission at the time was talking about projects to do, and as the money was coming in, we were kind of picking away at things.
Right,
And then we came to a stop and said, let's time out, let's try to leverage, maybe get more than, get $2 for $1 from the sales tax. And how can we get more bang for the buck per se? And then there was the idea of borrowing against it. We don't want to wait. We have needs now today. Let's go running.
Right, so it's essentially like you use a credit card for 0%
Right.
financing for 15 months
Yeah.
or 55 months. Or you found grant money where we get a twofer, where, we get, if we have match money coming in, let's
There you
use
go.
it from there and move that bucket over.
There you go. Hi, Bruce.
Okay, so moving on to page 2, back to your question. I think this will provide you a little bit more detail, Commissioner. So, is that these are all the projects that have been committed to.
Can we move?
Totaling the $6 million.
Next slide.
Can you change the slide,
Oh,
please?
I'm sorry. Next slide. So starting with $7,500, totaling up to $6,037,037. That number you can trace back to the second number that we were talking about previously. And all the projects are either substantially completed or completed, with the exception of the $2.9 million Park of Commerce.
so the 67.5 was spent on a parking study,
Correct.
and and that parking study is available somewhere.
In our hand.
Got it.
Yes, Madam Mayor. And that parking study is what it's on the project list of things to talk about, that will
Okay.
talk about the parking program for the city, in our downtown core.
And can I just say that I, for one, am happy to see that some of this money was spent on that, because like that money that was just coming down the pipeline, the CPF from Lois Frankel, those had to be
Ready.
shovel-ready projects, and unless we spend money on things like these studies and parks projects, when money comes up, if we don't have those studies done and we're not ready to hit the ground and put the shovel in the dirt, then we miss
We
the
lose it.
opportunities.
Yep.
So it's kind of like we have to make the investment of the architectural drawings to get to the money, to the funding source.
And Madam Mayor, if I may, I can give you a quick summary without having to go through it all. The points of interest, right, are the 2 line items to talk about the beach conceptual studies. You got the big number, the 208,320.
Right.
That was the initial conceptual, Gage CPZ,
Mhm.
the firm that came out with the.
That's
big
that booklet. We have
That
the
was like the big vision.
Right.
Then we went through the charrette.
charrette and everything. Yeah,
And then the subsequent to that, we had the smaller that ended up in the 2 kind of conceptual.
right.
Okay, and those are 2 related to the beach. Obviously, the surface parking lot, we're all familiar with the money, how that's tied into our downtown core. And then the South K Street was an add-on task order related to the parking study to study our K Street public parking lot for potential in the future of putting a parking garage. So that's what that last line item of 7,800 was. We actually got some conceptual drawing for that. But this is all very, very useful information and a lot of work that's gone into these studies. To Commissioner Maliga's point. And again, we'll circle back in the very near future to talk about all these various projects.
And we'll probably asking you in our offices, huh?
Can I just say one thing, Madam Mayor? It's very important that the rest of the dais is aware of the fact that there's 3 line items on here that if we do not move forward with a project on L&M Street for parking, essentially, we will have to pay back $2.404 million of that money that was used to acquire these properties to build a parking garage and supply parking to the city. So I just want us all to be mindful of that when we're talking about the L&M project. We have spent that money, and if we do not fulfill that need or hang on to that property for future use, that money has to go back. So again, I'm just being the fiscal person over here. I want us all to be mindful of that, okay?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
that's my
mean,
question.
there was a lot of property bought with not a lot of planning behind.
But I mean, we're past that, you know.
Yeah,
we're
but I'm saying
here. So
that's-
now, you know, we have the torch. I just don't want us to let the light go out on the torch and somebody say, well, we didn't think about that, because we really need to be mindful and fiscally responsible of
I
that
am
money
aware of
that's
that.
already been spent.
That's like 2
And
points.
that's, Matt,
2.4.
if I may, Madam Mayor, Commissioner Maliga, that was a great summary. Apply that same approach to the parking study and conceptual work that's been done at the beach. The sales tax referendum language is very specific to building infrastructure in various categories with a public purpose, life expectancy of, I think it was 5 years. Studies, conceptual designs isn't necessarily building infrastructure.
Right.
If it becomes part of a project, then it's part of the project cost and we're good.
Right.
But if the city, for whatever reason, decides to back out on any of these different topics, then we're looking at expense that needs to be paid back. And just to clarify, there's an ordinance that governs sales tax funds. And we decided, the city passed an ordinance in the inception of in 2017 to utilize the Palm Beach County League of Cities as our oversight committee. So that's been one of my roles as assistant city manager, is to provide the quarterly reports, go to the committee meetings, and you sit in front of a board of various people, elected officials, city staff, and they drill me on these projects. So when we submit the reports, it's got to pass a rationale. It's got to meet the letter of the referendum. So it's not, I hate to use this, it's not nilly-willy per se. There's a lot of thought and a lot of structure that we have to follow. And there's a lot of restrictions on how this stuff can be used so that we're not found in a situation where we have to pay back sales tax.
There's a lot of policy and procedure.
So my question was about those 2 line items, and so are we absolutely stuck that it has to be a parking facility, or could it fall under any of the other uses for sales tax? Or it has to be parking facility, and does it have to be public? Because to my knowledge, the current proposed project was not offering a lot of public parking. So I'm just a little confused here.
Right. Without deep diving and turning it into an L&M workshop, part of the L&M conversation was that through a development process that the sales tax money would get paid back to the city.
For the acquisition?
Okay. Could a different use be applied? I'm sure that a proposal could be submitted to the oversight committee and ask for clarification that, hey, we initially invested money in the public parking facility. Now we want to do this. And we've done that before. We've gone to them and gotten clarification just to make sure that we're meeting the letter of the referendum.
But the current proposal is not to provide parking, it's to have a developer pay us back that money and then we just pay it back into the sales tax. It's not actually for these intended purposes of providing parking.
And again, I don't want to turn it into an L&M proposal because we don't have a proposal.
Okay.
There hasn't been a project that's come forward.
I didn't mean to open a can of worms.
No, I mean, I was looking
No,
at,
sorry, we
I
need
was
to
looking
talk
at those
about
two,
this
that's
at
why,
some point.
that's why I put my light on, as I was looking at those 2 items, wondering what are, because we say these are our commitments, that we can't change anything because these are commitments, but there, it seems to be some flexibility,
Right.
at least for the property acquisition.
Right. Well, and it could be, but just remember, there's currently structures on those properties. Okay, so it's definitely a workshop conversation if that's the direction that the commission wishes to go down. I would just suggest that this wouldn't be the appropriate time to go down because that's really getting into the weeds of of a conversation, but
Commissioner Robinson.
Just, I want to point out the flexibility of the conceptual designs on the Oceanfront Park as well.
Right. Commissioner McVoy.
And I guess I'm also looking for clarification there. We have spent out of the penny sales tax $200,000 to study something to do at the beach.
that's correct.
That in no way ties us in that we have to do what was proposed by that study.
That's 100% correct.
Right.
Right.
That plus it's almost
There
300,000.
might be a little bit of a financial thing that we may have to go back to the oversight committee that you've mentioned and say, hey, we decided to build who knows what, somewhere else, totally different. They might say, well, you in good faith spent that money for that study at that time. You've decided there are better things to do. We're fine with that. You're good to go. Or they might not, but those are both options.
We just have to ask the question.
Right. So we don't want to, either us or the public, to think that those steps taken in the past hard line tell us what we have to do forward. Our options are still pretty open. If I understand correctly.
So if we, next page, we talk about the proceeds that we did receive by fund and then a little bit more detail thereafter. So we did go out the bond. Next page, please. Thank you. So the general fund received $2.8 million. The beach fund, $380,000, golf fund, $75,000, garage fund, $1.5 million, and the IT fund received $350,000 for projects that are part of the, that qualify for the any sales tax. The total of that is $5.1 million. Then you can see the pie chart to the right. So now getting in a little bit more detail by fund, if you turn to the next page, please.
But we've received 9.8
In revenue.
in revenue. I'm sorry.
In revenues.
Okay.
We
Oh, the bond. Okay.
yes. So we said we were going to receive $21 million.
We borrowed against that. Got it.
Exactly.
Sorry.
So did we pay this back? Because it seems almost even between what we committed to, what we borrowed for, and what we received so far.
We
They both seem about,
we had to pay back the $5.1 million.
okay, so you paid that back already.
No, not already. We will be paying that back over the next 5 years.
As we get the money, as we get the sales tax money, am I right with that?
There's a
I thought we already
amortization
received about 9.8 million.
in revenues. We received 9.8 in revenues.
Tell us what that distinction
Yes.
is.
The revenues are the amount of sales tax collected, remitted and collected, and then remitted and passed through back to the city. We collect about $2.1 million a year,
Mhm.
and we receive that payment each month. So multiply 10 years times $2.1 million, and that's where you got the original estimate of $21 million, $22 million. Okay, but that is contingent on activity by the consumer who pays for services that qualify for that sales tax. That sales tax is remitted, and then our portion is sent to us on a monthly basis. So it's a revenue stream. Whereas a borrowing is, again, we said, we have this revenue stream of about $2.1 million a year. We want to get a head start on $5 million worth of projects. Will you lend us the money before we receive the money? And we will commit that we will pay back that $5 million with a revenue stream over 5 years.
Is that a loan? Do we take out a loan for that? That we're paying
That's the
interest
bond.
on?
That's the
Okay,
bond.
and then, so we spent $6 million, but we've received about $9 million, but we're like on a payment plan. So it's not like, oh, we got $2 million, we're gonna put that towards the 5 million. We're like on a payment plan?
Where, yes, it's like a mortgage or a car.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So.
Next slide.
I'm sorry.
Next slide, right?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, next slide, please. All right, so specifically for the general fund, we received $2.8 million. And again, if you look at back up to the slide before you, the $2.8 million total is equal to the general fund total of 2.8. But specifically, and I won't go through each of these items, but for example, $100,000 was received to replace the City Hall elevator. Another project being the fire alarms, electrical upgrades, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the neighborhood road maintenance program bond for $2 million. All those projects, we have the money now, and we're going out and pursuing that activity.
And if you recall, you've seen some of these items come to you. Fire.
We did the elevator at the police station, yeah.
The only
Currently,
thing,
right now, staff is working on the golf course clubhouse, bathroom improvements, getting rid of the carpet and that's.
And that's started, you told me that work is actually starting
Oh,
next
yeah,
week.
looking good.
Okay,
oh
good.
yeah, they've already been in demo mode for
Yeah.
weeks over there.
I was just there the other day and
No, we were just waiting for season to get over.
Yeah. I can't wait.
The only thing I don't feel warm and fuzzy with on this list is electrical updates to the City Hall annex, and the building's closed up and no, we're not utilizing it fully, but I'll get over that.
We gotta figure out a use for that building.
Those into capture, and I appreciate the comments, Commissioner Malika. These were all identified because they were life safety critical measures.
Okay.
So when it's electrical
Lecture,
upgrades,
yeah.
it wasn't an upgrade to like take it to the next level. It was like to get
Fix
us up to meet code.
So we didn't catch on fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't want
So
to
don't lose
We
it.
don't want to jinx.
I feel better with that.
Feel warm and fuzzier now?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But
I don't want you to feel warm or fuzzy when it comes to,
Yeah, do your best there.
yeah.
Right, but let me add though, that we do have employees working in that building, and part of our long-range plan was to relocate those employees to some newly created space here at the 1900 building. So that the City Hall annex needs to be repurposed for some greater good. It's a beautiful building,
Oh, it's fabulous.
Absolutely.
but
We're on
it's
the same page.
we've got our employees kind of distributed all over the place. I really would like to move those employees to better a better facility for them than that building. But the building does need work.
Let's get a new city hall.
Wink, wink. And again, to add, Madam Mayor, it's a lot, these are projects, and we all, know and love Felipe LaFaso, our Assistant Public Works Director. Felipe is really our lead project manager on a lot of this stuff. And if it's in leisure, he coordinates with Lauren Bennett, or if it's, a facility that maybe William Waters and Ed, 1900, they all collaborate. So this stuff is in motion. They're not all done. Some of them have started, some of them are going to get finished. But this is what staff is grappling with right now and working through in our FY21 CIP, which ties back to what we talked about before.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide, please.
Oh, excuse me.
Keith? Yep, thank you. All right, the next two funds, if you will, are the beach fund and golf fund. And as Juan just mentioned, the work on the golf fund, that's already been starting, $75,000 worth. And the beach fund has $380,000 worth of programs or projects which are enumerated. Next slide, please. The next is the garage fund. There's a $1.5 million amount that's for a combined garage facility for the public works. And then the other pieces, remaining pieces are going to be paid from the enterprise funds specifically that use that garage.
So the garage, you mean behind 1900 up there?
Up on the berm where Public Works is at.
Okay.
Yeah, where our big truck.
Because there's another where we keep the dumpsters and stuff up behind 1900.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, okay.
Right up here off 8th Street.
And thank God that we're redoing that building.
Yes, long overdue.
All right, and then the last category is information technology, and then the different programs that are associated with that. for $350,000. So again, the summation of all these different projects, total $5.1 million. Which is for the lead sheet. Next slide, please. We're in an interesting conversation. We have future projects that are essentially earmarked for these revenue sources. I'm going to start with the street maintenance and IT infrastructure because I think there will be a longer conversation with the pool. But the $2 million and the $750,000 have been identified in the long-term CIP. They weren't funded in fiscal year 20 or 21, but they were 22 and now. So that's why the previous city commissioner approved the 5-year plan, but they haven't been appropriated, so they're not part of the balances that you saw earlier on.
Have you identified where that would go? You know, what streets, what is, it's just general, we got to fix things. Okay.
And I'll give you a quick overview before we, get into the $6 million line item. When we talk about ERP, when we talk about utility billing technology, when we talk about dashboards,
ERP,
the enterprise system that we talked about before of needing to upgrade and migrate away from Naviline to something that's more user-friendly, customer service engagement, whatnot. This is a pot of money where, we've talked about the last previous weeks where we need direction. We need workshops on how where we want to go and invest, the money to do, and what projects we want to accomplish. Sorry. Street maintenance, road improvements. There was a bucket of money, 2 million identified to be invested.
Mhm.
The where, the when is now up to
Okay.
you guys as a body to decide. And whether it's we pick up where the PCI left on year 4 road bond program, or, do you want to go by district, or other specific roads that are just so bad that
right.
maybe have gotten worse and weren't quite where the PCI was, where we left off. The PCI was the road index measure of how we decided which roads. Commissioner Revolt, you recall.
I
Yeah.
don't recall, but the other commissioners.
Right. And, so again, these are all big conversations that are going to take time to go through and really get into. But again, it's just high level. And you can apply the same theory approach to the 6 million when it says pool and beach improvements. All right. So in essence, there's been 8.75 million talked about, committed, earmarked, but have not been appropriated in our 5-year CIP.
Okay.
Hey, you touched on what I was going to ask. Excuse me, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I was gonna
IT
follow you.
infrastructure, my biggest concern is this going to be what you and I have talked about, which is the new software that we need? Because unfortunately, our finance department is so far behind in the numbers, and the software has a lot to do with it. Is that included in the 750 number? Is the software for finance to be able to get away from Naviline? No?
No, not, if I may, Madam Mayor, not specifically, because we haven't specifically as an organization talked about the commitment to pursue a new ERP. It's on a wish list. But as you've been here in the last, how long has it been? Who's counting?
44 days.
44 days. You're encountering struggles as an organization that we grapple with, whether it's being able to provide sophisticated, dashboard information. You guys have all spent time with Ed, and you've seen what we could be capable of doing. And then there's the interface with the public, taking a snapshot of where we're at in year-to-date actuals with our operating budget. Maybe I want to know a little bit more about a certain park, and being able to access that information online. Going toward a more modern, more sophisticated cloud-based ERP system is going to basically give the organization nitrous. Okay, and it's going to take us to another level, whether it's us as a team, deep diving information, the public engagement part that I keep harping on.
Yeah.
But just keep in mind, ERP is a multi-year phased in heavy lift project.
So that's not including in this
It's
IT.
not included. And I'll be honest, it's going to exceed the 750.
That's why I was-
when it's all said and done.
It sounds
The
like
Village
it.
of Wellington went through almost a 2-year process because you got to run 2 systems at the same time.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And you got to bring in extra labor to help with that migration because it includes your finance module, your HR module, your utility billing.
Inventory,
modules,
everything.
everything. It is our backbone system to everything that we do.
Mhm.
So a lot of the frustrations we've encountered whether it's from the public side or the inward outward side, us, back to the public, has been challenges to deal with technology. And that's why you'll see IT infrastructure, and it was very generic. Even in the breakdown where it talks about computer upgrades, network upgrades, that was intentionally done very generic because we were hoping, back then, almost 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago, we weren't quite sure when the ERP conversation would be talked about. So again, this stuff's been committed. It's just a vision. We just need direction. And again, that we'll deep dive into this, but we've started pursuing the ERP conversation internally and trying to prepare and prime the engine to bring something forward to you.
Well, to me, it's as important as hardening the wires for electrical.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. We are a business,
That's it.
and this is something that's gonna, as you and I talked about, I'm like, this needs to move to the top of to electrical fire hazard. That's where I'm at
Life
with
safety.
CRP. It's, it's a life safety, it's a finance safety, it's a functioning safety issue with our city.
I love your words.
Yeah. And the cool part about the ERP world has evolved, and
Ever-changing.
cloud-based.
Yep.
And there's a lot more opportunity out there as far as platforms that talk and migrate. And this app can talk to the central nerve and it does all these cool things. And again, we have, our neighbors who are a little bit ahead of us, municipalities, and you go to the websites and they've got these cool dashboards, whether it's OpenGov or Tyler Munis, they all do cool little things. But what's great now versus Navalon back then is you can customize something.
Right.
You don't have to take something off the shelf that you kind of boxed into. So again, it's going to be, I perceive a very spirited, very involved conversation because it's a significant investment.
Yeah.
And it's something that you invest that sets up the organization for 8 to 10 years out. This isn't something we invest 2 years.
Yeah.
And again, technology evolves. And you've heard Michael say before, my goal is to bring everybody up to 2010.
Right.
We were in 2020,
Yeah.
technology. So
And do we have an idea, I think this may be, of like how, when you say it's a significant investment, how significant?
Ballpark.
I mean, if you don't have an idea, don't.
we're going to be in $1 million, 2 million, 2.5 million.
Okay, so not 20 million.
Not 20 million. No, and every municipality is a little different.
Right.
We're very unique and we're awesome because we have our own electric utility.
Right.
And you heard Ed and Franco talk about that whole component.
Right.
So, when we go out to benchmark, well, what did Wellington pay? Well, cool.
Yeah.
But you're not us.
We ain't them.
Right. Royal Palm, what'd you pay? Cool, but you're not us.
Right.
And again, I'm not throwing this out there to throw wrenches in anything. I want to, because we're workshopping,
No, it's good.
throw this workshop stuff out there that you're going to hear me pounding over here going ERP. It's not bright and shiny, but
Tell me again what ERP means. ERP stands for,
Resource is it enterprise resource?
Enterprise resource.
projection.
Enterprise.
because I think everybody, public needs to know too.
Just hit a
So,
breeze.
Madam Mayor, if I may, at liberty for the utility. Addressing some of the concerns that Commissioner McBoy enunciated very, very well earlier for us. We are working on technology solutions for customer service and for the electric utility that will bolt on to the existing Naviline system and are capable of bolting on to whatever future ERP system we deploy. So there's
Whatever
something.
ERP means.
Yeah, whatever, exactly. It's the backbone of program, if you will, infrastructure. Some cities or companies
I'm
might.
going to say that out loud so people listening who are smarter than me will also know it. Enterprise
Resource
resource
planning.
enterprise resource planning. Thank you.
Right. So it's the backbone of the IT and the information system. It's not hardware, but it's a software. So the things that we bring forward for you from a technology point of view to improve customer service or to improve electric utility operations will be capable of bolting onto the Naviline or being bolted onto many of the future ERP systems we might deploy. So we're being very careful not to select tools
Right.
or, if you will, apps in a
Sure.
way that cannot be transferred to wherever we go in the future. So
Glad
they,
to hear.
so it may seem at times, and you may rightly say, gee, don't you have the cart in front of the horse? Don't you need to fix that end first? And the answer is, we can't wait for that piece to be fixed, but the pieces we're going to move forward with within the individual department will be
Well, then-
capable, adapted to whatever the city goes with.
They can
It has
talk.
to
Thank you. Thank you.
be adaptable.
Commissioner McVoy has a question.
More comment, well, one question, and I guess this would be for either Juan or Ed or for Bruce. Do all cities use one system for everything? Or for instance, especially if you have a utility, I could imagine that the utility says, look, you know what? We need our own system and it doesn't really need to know anything about, beach funds or whatever. We don't do beaches. We sell them juice, but that's about it. So, there may be options to not necessarily go to a monolithic, old school kind of approach. And the same might be true of finance departments. They may say, look, we do stuff that other departments don't really need. So,
I mean, why not?
No, I mean, yes.
Yeah, I've been in the business since municipal finance since 1992, I think it is, and different organizations, and each has a different theory and a different approach. The majority of the cities I've worked with use a software application called Munis, Tyler Munis. It's a Chevrolet of municipal software applications. But to that, they use, they may use a different module for recreation or a different module for police in or school or whatever it was site specific. The industry, as far as I understand and know, they were very protective of their software applications. And they did not allow for a lot of migration. They wanted you to use that box like you were talking about. Now they seem to be opening up much more because they know that municipalities or entities want to use the best of class software applications, and they need to be able to integrate with that. So I think it's a much more dynamic platform than it used to be. And I think, I know Ed will have specific concerns and needs, and not one software application. Munis is not going to be able to do everything that everybody wants. So we have to have again, be flexible in how we do things.
Yeah. And the key is, and Tad, if I may, is all the different modules have to speak to each other. There has to be a seamless sharing of information. And now we pay into a service called Gartner, which basically is kind of a clearinghouse in everything in the world of information technology. And Gartner is someone that I can go to like in the form of a consultant. And it's what we've been doing and really help us deep dive and kind of weed through the weeds per se and get us to an understanding before we get to the point of issuing an RFP. And that's something that we've had here for quite some time. They've helped us with our cybersecurity stance, and how we've invested in different security technologies. So the arena of ERPs, enterprise resource planning, has definitely grown and evolved to Bruce's point. So it's going to be a dynamic conversation for sure.
Well, we're up.
Let me stress too that what we need to make sure is that the if you will, the enterprises, the city's financials are protected, are in one place, and we don't want to have multiple financial engines running. We need, Bruce, for example, the finance department needs to have a set of books for the city. And it's corrupted by the various modules that various groups may be running. So that's very important that we have a common, a balance sheet income statement for the city as a whole.
Thank you.
Financials. So the only other way to do that is to actually spin utilities off into an authority, which would have a separate system. And there are many cities and municipalities that operate that way. We are not that way. I'm not going to say that's right or wrong, but we need to make sure that the financials cannot be, if you will, corrupted or damaged, if you will, by outside entities. That needs to be protected and controlled. So what we're talking about is individual enterprise funds or business units having modules which are unique to their specific needs that extract information from the city's financials as an outbound data source, not as a way of actually altering the city financials. That's very important to have that segregation.
Thank you.
Well, Madam Mayor, yes, well, wrap this piece up. I know we have a lot.
I know that,
ground to
I
cover.
see Commissioner McBoy's light is on.
No, you can go ahead, but I just want to say that certainly from my interest in good governance and so on, I think you've spoken to a little bit, that the software's gotten a lot better, but a very strong part of it for me is that the public has access to a lot of stuff. And I remember when I did a good governance training a few years back, that one of the things that was pointed out, when you make a lot of your city or municipality information publicly available, that I don't have to do a information request to somebody, I can just go look at it, it's on the web. You open up the possibility, obviously not to change it outbound, as Ed has said, outbound only, you can pull information, you can't push. But it allows the possibility of crowdsourcing of stuff, that you get a group of people who say, you know, I've been kind of wondering about that, and people pull the data and they do some analysis that staff doesn't have time or didn't think of, or the commission didn't think of, and they come back and say, hey, look, we analyzed this data, and turns out that what you want to do with your roads is correlate it with the light poles or whatever it is, you know. And by making a commitment as a city to have a very, push as much information, make it readily available, we expand. There are a lot of talented people like that. So we would see some crowdsourcing stuff happening, I suspect.
And it makes us much more transparent.
Yeah, exactly. That's the primary,
Well,
motive,
that's-
but there's some additional
word.
benefits that we can be aware of too.
And if I can add onto that, the city, as we speak, is implementing OpenGov. OpenGov is a software application that, just as it says, it's open to the public.
We have that now?
We're doing it for the budget piece right now, but it will be expanded to general ledger activity. So people can actually go in and do what if scenarios. with the budget.
Exactly.
And it's a very interactive tool to your.
Yeah.
What can they see
Don't
now?
always say this term, it's outward facing,
Right,
you know,
Right, right.
so it creates those dashboards, it creates that click of a mouse data, budget related, for the public to be able to interact with us. You know, Boynton Beach has a great example of, you know, to tout a neighboring city, cautiously, but their website, you can go to their finance section, it has dashboards and it'll give you high level overview, operating budget, capital, you know, and that can lead to crowdsourcing conversations. So OpenGov is something, you know, we've been working on internally and trying to ramp up and get that outward facing piece to our award-winning website, you know, so that's a big project that's in the works.
Our website has won an award.
Well, for me, you know, we've come a long way, you know, wink, wink, it needs a few. things.
So right now with OpenGov, what can, if I wanted to look at, what could I see? Is that,
OpenGov is not.
if we don't
Not
have
live
it yet?
yet, not live yet.
Oh, okay, oh, I didn't think so. All right, thank you.
I have
Looking forward
just
to it.
two quick questions.
Commissioner Stokes.
Thank you. I just wanted to get my head wrapped around, because we received money, we borrowed money, we're receiving more money.
Mhm.
And I just want to understand, is there a sales tax fund? And do we have any money in it right now?
$3 million.
So we have $3 million in it right now, and then are we paying every month to our bond for the other?
That's biannual payment.
Okay, and how much are we paying biannually for that?
I don't remember. I can give you that information. I'll email that to you.
Okay, I just want to get my head around, so I'm looking at $8 million. Am I, are we going to have to take out another $8 million bond, or no, we have 3 million now that we can use for some things, but if we want to do like a $6 million project, we probably have to take out another bond, like.
Well, it's really just a straightforward cash flow model, okay? We have to set aside, it's about $1.2 million aside. Basically, it's $5.1 million divided by 5, and that's what you pay back.
Okay.
But it's a little bit different. It's not that straightforward, okay? But
Of course not.
in general, that's what you're paying back each year, okay? So if we collect $2.1 million that is estimated, in theory, we have $1 million that can go to a project. But how far will $1 million go? Or do you say, okay, fine, we can do a very similar bond where we borrow it all up front and get the money up front, okay? So that if you move forward with some of these projects, we have the money in the bank to expend. Versus waiting year by year, by year, by year to get the money. And then once we get enough money in the piggy bank, we can go buy, candy down at the store. So, but we just have to make sure that we match up the revenues and time-wise, and
Right.
not overcommit
Exactly.
Right,
on our estimates of what future revenues are going to be.
Yeah, that's
Right.
my concern.
and I don't want to have to pay more interest on something if I don't have to, so if we have a $750,000 project or $1 million project, and we have that money in our fund right now, like, we don't need to wrap that into a whole nother.
No, and you would not.
Right, okay.
Right.
So I just wanted to get a sense of, because if what we actually had right now.
We have about $3 million.
So, okay, that's good to know. And then the last thing I just want to know that's not related to this, but out of curiosity, just if you could remind me, how much longer are we paying the road bond, that we took out, the $40 million?
That's another 20 years, I believe.
Yeah, the payment of that, yeah, but we're almost done with year 4. Well, we're in the process of completing year 4 road projects, but the payout, it's 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like in any time in the near future, we'd say, oh, let's do another one of those. Because we're still gonna be paying on that one.
Has to be voted on.
On capacity for sure.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation.
Okay, I know, I just wanted to know it for my own.
We're
I'm
learning.
trying to get a sense of where we're at.
I see Commissioner McVoy's lights on.
Excellent peripheral vision. Just for our ballpark, a little bit follow-up of what Commissioner Stokes said, that obviously I heard you about the candy store, that it's appealing if we know that we've got another 5 years of stream coming in, and that's about 10 million, and we want to do a bigger project. It's nice to say, well, why don't we borrow and plan on that coming in, hope that nothing goes south with that, and it probably won't. What I'm curious is, do you have a ballpark of what our interest cost is of what we've already done to borrow? So
For this
that,
project, for the $5 million?
Yeah.
right, does that cost us $1 million that didn't go to the candy store because it goes to pay back the loan? Do you have any ballpark idea?
I have a pretty good ballpark.
Okay, good. Just so we
Yeah.
had that in mind, because we're about halfway through, so if we did the same thing again, it'll be in that similar ballpark.
Well, the whole thing, as you probably know, is that the interest rates are
Pretty low.
very low.
Right.
Okay, so the opportunity may not be the same 6 months out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
It's only likely to go up, not down.
Right.
they're gonna go up, right?
Yeah.
Right now, we pay about $250,000 a year, a little over $1 million over the 5-year period for the debt service.
So we got 5 million early on to spend early, and that cost us about $1 million.
A little more than, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
we come out of some
20%,
other funds.
yeah,
It's about a little over 4% was.
the interest rate.
That was the interest rate, but we also got premium, which means we got more money. We're paying back, the way they structured it, we're paying back less money for the duration. It's you either, as a bond premium goes to us,
Yeah,
we either get more money than we ask for with the same interest rate, or they reduce the amount of money that you pay principal back. So
okay,
that's how it's structured. So we were able to, which would reduce the interest rate after the premium was in like 3.2 or 3.3, I forget what it was. But for discussion, I'm overly complicating it. For our discussion purposes, it's right over 4% that we're paying back on the aggregate.
okay. Moving right along.
Presentation, or my last slide, I should say, in the presentation. Turn to the page, would you, Keith?
Keith, if you can go to the last slide, please.
All right, we talked about this already, additional CIP projects. I think we should talk about the ERP, the Ocean Current Energy
Yeah.
Program, et cetera, et cetera. These are things that have been talked about, but do not have a specific earmark. And then the column to the right potential sales tax, potential funding sources. To put some thought out there, an extension of the current program would be nice, rather than ending in year 10. If there is any political ability to continue that, that would be definitely. ARPA funding, as you all know, we're talking about the infrastructure plan and what that may create, and other state grants and pass-throughs. So that's more of, staff's responsibility, I guess, finding, potential revenue sources in grants and that kind of stuff.
And again, the additional CIP projects column is a snapshot of just some high level projects.
Right.
Our needs extend well beyond, a few handful of rows. So we definitely have our hands full and a lot of conversations ahead of us.
And the Gulfstream being specifically the hotel project.
Correct. And that would be the funding the economic incentive piece to it, with the improvements to the Gulfview area.
And do we have any idea when they're coming to us for that ask?
It needs to be scheduled.
Yeah.
It needs to be scheduled, and I think to confirm, Amber and Amy are going to be in town meeting.
Right, we're meeting with them
Yeah.
soon. And, I'm concerned about the financing. I really am. It's like, there's a lot of talk about what's gonna happen, but I haven't seen anything yet, and I'm a little,
Show me the money.
show me the money, show me the commitment, show me the agreement that they have from a lending source. Who's your, you're not McVoy, you're Maliga. It's a late night.
It's 9:00. It's not that late.
Wow.
I just want to throw this out there, and not to be, to throw some spice in the sauce, but under potential funding sources, I would like us to go back to what the mayor had suggested a couple days ago and look at the sustainability stuff that we give and the improvements to these developers. And if there are projects that fit into the surrounding areas where we have an improvement coming in, bringing that to the table and saying, okay, the sustainability, let's look at if we structure that to being the surrounding area and not just being solely spent within that project guidelines, let's say new lighting, new sidewalks, whatever. I would just like us to keep that in the back of our head, that could be a future use down the road from now.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
But I don't think it's going to be to the level of what we're considering here.
No, but I think we need to talk about it. And as a matter of
Part of
fact.
the overall
along those
budget
lines,
process.
Every little bit helps.
We, it's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I think we need to talk, if we can do it tonight at a workshop, that would be great, to start talking about, we need to have a workshop on this. We're doing a moratorium on it, but we don't want it to sit there. We need to sort of start talking about what that is.
Yes, and Madam Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
I know Michael and William and myself and staff have been talking about coming forward and bringing forward your requested sustainable bonus program at you guys' request to have a conversation about it. So that's also another workshop topic that's coming.
The sustainability, yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
And what about the moratorium?
Here, we should all just live here and we could just meet day in and day out.
I know, it'd be so much fun.
Employee housing, maybe we can.
Employee, really, well, you own that house on M Street.
Shipping container.
Now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, the moratorium on sustainability, where are we at with that?
I'll have to follow up with you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, please do.
Is
Yeah.
Christie on the call? Did legal look into this at all or no? Who was
Uh,
looking into it?
I can't really tell who's on or not. I know Ed's here. And I know I got staff behind me, but it's Christy, are you on by any chance?
I am. I am.
Hi.
Good evening.
Have an update on the moratorium conversation that you could provide to the commission?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways that we can deal with the moratorium. We can either bring it forward to put a sort of a stay in place for a time period to allow the commission to address what they would like to see in that program, or if they just want to simply end the program, we can do that. I think the manager was targeting May 6th, that Thursday, for a workshop on that type of issue. So we could come forward May 4th with proposed moratorium to put a complete stay in place, or allow you to have a more in-depth discussion on May 6th to talk about if you wanted perhaps just tweak that process in terms of go ahead and move forward with an ordinance to go ahead and change that.
Well, I think we need, I mean, I'm certainly in favor of moving as quickly as we can. We don't want to hold up development.
Correct.
I mean, I'm not,
That's where I was going.
yeah, no. But I also think we do need to look at it. And I think that it's interesting to have staff bring us things, but I think we need to talk, get some guidelines from
I
staff.
think we should workshop.
But then then we need to sit down. And are you talking about having that particular workshop on,
May 6th,
we have a workshop, is that what so the May 6th workshop is on sustainability?
plus.
Yeah. And staff is going to come back with some suggestions about that.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
So can we just put because I would not want a developer coming into the city at this point to count on that the current sustainability program. I would like them to know that there is a hold on it just until we get a new one. Because otherwise there's no point. They'll all be, because it's going to be a little bit different than.
I don't think the process goes that fast. We're meeting a workshopping in a week from now.
I understand that, but I'm saying, I'm suggesting that until we come up with a new plan and that will give us a good deadline to keep working quickly, that we do put a hold on it so that a developer doesn't come in and say, but you promised me this and now it's different. I don't want anybody to rely on that current sustainability.
And I agree with you with all due respect. I just think the moratorium word throws up a red flag to investors and
Whatever the word,
All the same.
whatever it is, I don't care the word.
maybe it's just a refocusing of funding or
Yes, but in the meantime,
reprogramming
we
it.
need to let them know.
No, absolutely.
Right.
But like just the word moratorium.
I don't care about. the
I
word.
mean, if we could just put out, it's being reworked, programs being
It's suspended.
whatever, it's not
Suspended.
suspended,
Give me a word. Give me a word that you.
reconstruct it.
Improve.
Improved.
Revamped
In the meantime,
Revamped.
Oh,
Oh, listen.
What?
This is timing in.
what was that?
revamped.
Okay, but I agree with that. I agree with that. But in the meantime,
We're on pause.
but that's all I want.
Yeah, we're on pause while we're revamping and improving.
I love those words.
May not-
Yeah, the word moratorium to me just.
I like-
I don't care. So can we get it out on the next agenda to have the pause started on May, whatever the next agenda?
Madam Mayor, why don't we do this is my staff's listening, Chrissy's on, and I know William's on because he's got the next presentation up. Let us reconvene tomorrow morning. We have our typical director staff meeting in the morning and we'll recap all the conversations that happened. That's pretty
We're not done yet.
routine. We're not done yet, but on the topic of the sustainable bonus program and that workshop conversation,
Mhm.
I will commit that we'll send you guys an updated email very specifically on what's going to get talked about on May 6th. And we'll set the stage from there and go from there.
Yeah, I think pause and revamp is
Revamp and
Love
improve,
it.
new and improved.
new and improved. Depends on your perspective.
That's it.
Commissioner Robinson.
Well, no, I'm just concerned about the consistency and trust in government and ping ponging back and forth.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the concern that outside investors will have in a moratorium, which means stop.
We just had this discussion and we decided not to use that word. We
Well-
decided to use the word pause. So that no one comes
Which
in and.
pause means stop.
No, means pause.
Means
Yield.
pause.
Yield?
But my concern, Commissioner Robinson, is that some developer walks in tomorrow and we say, well, here's our sustainability program. And they base their finances on that particular sustainability program. We don't, because then if we do that, we are then committing to that sustainability program.
Right.
Okay,
And,
and we want to revamp it.
yeah, and I think this is a pretty big deal. It may sound uncomfortable to
It's a huge deal.
pause or a moratorium or whatever. The reality is, if we're serious about wanting to revisit it
Mhm.
with some probably pretty substantial
I mean, guys,
changes,
we're literally 9 days
Then-
away from the workshop. It's not. I
then
can't-
Yeah.
the point is that you do need to give a clear signal. That's only fair to the developers. Hey, don't count on what's in place now. We are planning to change it. We're pausing it for 30 days, 60 days. whatever
Unless
it
they're
is.
already grandfathered in with people who already
Right,
have.
exactly.
things
Anyone
in
that's
wheelhouse.
had their stuff in is
Yeah.
in.
I think it's fair to say that any RFPs that have been approved up until
Bohemian, for an example, is.
the whatever date,
Yeah,
Yeah,
we don't want to stop anything that's in the pipeline.
Yeah, but I mean, if there's an RFP out there that was approved on
Right.
the basis of the previous,
Exactly.
even though there might not be a site plan approval, but they want an RFP, we need to let them know you still fall under the old
Right.
guidelines. But we will have a new and improved project coming. out.
Exactly. Thank you. Are you okay, Ms. Robinson?
Madam Mayor, if I can just
I like
add,
improving things.
Yes, Christie?
like Juan was saying, I think the best bet, because we're going to need some input from William Waters on exactly how we would put a pause in place, because it may require an amendment to our comprehensive plan, which, as you know, may require more time than we can do quickly. So like Juan said, let staff convene tomorrow and talk about the details. So at May 4th, if nothing else, we can provide a status update to you and lay out some options.
Okay. I just at first blush to put a pretty quick temporary pause on something, I would think it would really encumber the process to make it be a comp plan amendment. That's a long process, and we're not looking for that. We're looking for just hold our breath for a minute, get a new one in, and that will, when we come up with a new one, yes, that will, wherever that sustainability program is, that will have to be amended. But I don't think we need to do a comp plan amendment just to pause the process. That's just my 2 cents. I'd like to keep this as brisk and streamlined as we possibly can.
Madam Mayor, if I may respectfully.
Please do.
Staff's listening, key staff's on listening to the conversation.
Okay.
And
And they're texting you like crazy.
No, wife's checking in, make sure I'm, no. It's gonna require conversation.
Yeah.
And the right thing to go about it is let staff reconvene
No,
tomorrow,
that's fine.
you know, and we'll, at a minimum, we'll email a recap and kind of, and give you guys an expectation of what to expect on May 6th for the workshop. And to Chrissy's point, maybe on May 4th, you know, we can provide a quick update of what to expect May 6th. It's a big step. And to do it tonight, you know, and obviously.
We're not doing
there's a lot
it.
of Conversation that needs to happen. I think we need to move on to the next and final presentation with staff. We still need to get into the strategic plan overview.
What's OCE?
OC is Ocean Current Energy.
That would be so exciting if we could get that one,
Ocean Current Energy.
yeah, going.
All right, Mr. Miller, Madam Mayor, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to
Thank you.
a few hours with you soon.
All right, moving forward, our last presentation is by William Waters. And I think Jess Savage may also be included, and Jess and William work together along with department directors 2 years ago, 2 fiscal years ago, and going through a process with our commission and doing what I would consider one of the most significant and important documents the city has in their strategic plan. And again, it's preparing you for budget conversation. Talk a little bit about capital, you've talked a little bit about sales tax, ERP systems, fees, and all sorts of things. And all this stuff kind of ties in, you know, to your strategic planning, your vision, what it is that we want to be, what it is we want to invest in, whether it's neighborhood, your parks, development, all the different pieces. And this document really helps identify the roadmap for the organization and helps us as staff carry out the vision that the commission lays out. Again, and it sends signals out to the public, whether it's as a developer, maybe it's a homeowner looking to move. Here's what Lake Worth's about. Here's what Lake Worth wants to be. And here are the things that are important to us. So without further ado, William, if you could, the floor is yours.
Madam Mayor and Commission, Keith, do we know what presentation is being shared? Is that from you or, because I haven't shared the presentation yet.
This is the one that was, do you want to share for yourself?
No, you can, if you've got it there, it'll be great. So as Juan mentioned, there was quite a bit of effort put together to have a document that gave a very high level vision and mission for the city. What is Lake Worth Beach? It came out of discussions on how to promote and market the new name for the city. Jess Savage, as Juan mentioned, worked very closely with some consultants to get it started. And then she and I collaborated on bringing it forward to have a really good idea of the bigger picture for the city, looking at why we are how we are, what we are, and who we are. And you can go to the next slide. So I know it's a little late and you'll probably want to have some questions before we get done with this. So in doing a strategic plan, we were focused on how we can improve people's lives for the better. How can we make Lake Worth Beach the best version of itself that it can be? How can we provide good customer service? How can we address the constituents' desires for quality of life, good programming, transparency, and provide the full range of services in the best way we can to have Lake Worth Beach be the location for your home, your business, and be the first choice in Palm Beach County for those people wanting to come here and invest in their businesses. You can go to the next slide, please. So we went through some evaluation of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and challenges during the summer of 2018. There were quite a variety of individual interviews among directors, city commissioners, the previous mayor, and other. Moving on during that summer, we came up with a visioning session looking at how we wanted the city to look between 2020 and 2025, which was going to serve as the basis for the strategic plan a little bit later, but our plan has a 7-year cycle and our land development regulations are usually updated and reviewed at least once or twice a year. So then we looked at mission, vision, values, and priorities during the winter and spring of 2019. There were some exercises that were taking place to sort of identify what pillars, which you'll see very shortly, should make up the strategic plan for the city. And then it was brought back to the commission in the summer of 2019 and was adopted. You can go to the next slide, please. So a strategic plan in its basic sense provides a framework for making critical policy and budgetary decisions about investing resources today in order to maximize future performance moving forward. So that's just a general definition of what a strategic plan is for a city. We'll go to the next slide. So in this strategic plan, it includes various components, has a mission statement that's clear and explicit, stating the purpose of the plan and the reason why we have it. Our values as a business, as a city, and the values that are expected of not only the commission and the mayor, but also the employees, management, and the citizenry. There's a vision statement. Ours is a little more of a symbolic vision statement, and we'll show you that in a few minutes. The strategic priorities, which fall under the various pillars, and the strategic objectives, which outline specific types of goals and activities to achieve those pillars that have been identified. The next slide. So we've put some pictures in it. This is an image of our strategic plan. Each of you should have been given a copy of it in its final production form. There's a updated version and a longer version. It's also available on the city's website. So we're here to build a reality based on the city's dreams. Again, reflecting some of the discussions in the comp plan updates that were done in 2017, the city of Lake Worth Beach is a city of neighborhoods, and we are committed to the highest quality public service through a commitment of integrity, hard work, and friendly attitude, collaboration and cooperation and business community, as well as the commission and the city staff. And we're here to try to provide safer neighborhoods, encourage community pride, and build a vibrant and diverse as well as sustainable economy and plan thoughtfully for the future. Our comp plan also has an emphasis on preserving and enhancing our natural, historical, and cultural environment and resources. Next slide. The core values of our strategic plan do happen to spell the word teach. They include teamwork, ethics, accountability, and transparency, commitment to innovation and excellence. You heard a little bit about that with the ERP system, and honesty and integrity, which involves with ethics and professionalism. The vision came out of an exercise where we asked what individual words best describe what Lake Worth is, and then evolved. And now that we had the name beach in the city, we wanted to include that in the vision. So the beach part stands for bold and beautiful, exciting and enthusiastic, ambitious and artsy, compassionate and confident. And a primary driver of our economic development thrust was to have it be home for a variety of new residents. The strategic priorities, you can go to the next slide. This is the first pillar, and I'm just going to read those for the people that are in the public, may not be able to see this. Positioning Lake Worth to be a competitive, viable location of choice. And that involves 5 different aspects of work from the city to achieve that. We were hoping or desirous of Lake Worth Beach being at the top of the heap when it comes to investing in Palm Beach County, moving to Palm Beach County, becoming a partner with the city, and other aspects. It also includes utilizing city assets to the broadest and best possibility and providing superior public amenities and services. Go on to the next one, please. Second one was strengthening Lake Worth Beach as a community of neighborhoods. That's a little bit self-explanatory, but some of the items that are covered in our comprehensive plan and a focus of our land development regulations is to diversify housing options, continue to work on crime reduction and prevention, sustain our infrastructure investments, preserve the character and protect historic resources, have leisure opportunities for live, work, learn, and play, and then collaborate with the schools to foster a better, diverse, culturally enriching educational opportunities for everyone. The third one was celebrating the unique historical, coastal, and cultural diversity of the city. As we have sort of preached for at least almost 11 years I've been with the city, Lake Worth Beach is probably the most culturally diverse community in Palm Beach County, if not Southern Florida. It has some really unique, which is actually oxymoronic, but unique aspects in terms of history, environment, culturally. We wanted to celebrate those and use those as a selling point within the strategic plan to move the city forward. You can go to the next slide. Navigating towards a sustainable community. This arises a little bit out of the creation of the department that I oversee. We're not looking at sustainability just from an environmental or energy consciousness. We're looking at it at the broadest definition in terms of fiscal responsibility and sustainability, cultural sustainability, the sustainability of the environment as well, how we invest and plan for our future, where the monies are spent to best ensure that Lake Worth continues to grow and be successful and be fiscally responsible and can provide those qualities of services and needs that the community wants to have. We can go to the next slide. Last one is affirming government for all, and this is ensuring effectiveness between our constituents and the city staff, looking at the cutting edge technologies and customer service aspects, standard operating procedures, expectations for high performance, that all works together to ensure that the services that we provide and the government that is serving the constituents and property owners is the best that it can be, if not the best in all of Palm Beach County, which is our goal. And some of that was discussed in the previous conversations about where money might be invested to move us forward and improve customer service relations. Next slide. So again, going back to our core values, there was a little beach ball created that has those items in it when it comes to our vision statement. We've created various pieces. There's actually a core value card that is given to all the city staff so they can be reminded of what our commitment to the strategic plan will be. When we're doing evaluations of projects in the city now, we include an evaluation and analysis of how that project fits in with the strategic plan. We've got a couple of marketing materials that are sent out, a postcard, a little poster, other items that are celebrating the strategic plan and the city's commitment to it. We can go to the next slide. So how that works with our other documents, we've talked about the strategic plan, but it's a larger umbrella. And underneath that comes our comprehensive plan, which also has a vision component. It's required by the Florida Statutes 163 under the growth strategies and growth management. That's reviewed every 7 years. The last major review was in 2017. We did another update in 2018. Out of that comes our land development regulations, which give the rules and regulations of how you can invest in the city. Our goal was to have clear, consistent, concise, and predictable requirements in the city so people would do what they could do and how they could do it. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. The Sustainable Bonus Program, which you're down looking at, which also includes our Transfer Development Rights Program, came out of what was in the comp plan in 2007, was an idea that when people invested in the city at a certain intensity, which also includes density and height, there should be something extra proposed for that project. So the Sustainable Bonus Program was created in the comp plan of 2012, and then further described in the LDRs that were adopted in 2013. And we can go into this in more detail when we have our conversation. Could you go back to the previous slide, please? Thanks. But the sustainable bonus took into account that in the discussions in creating the documents back from 2008 through 2013, there was a certain type of atmosphere in Lake Worth Beach being in a 2-story city. And that if a project wanted to be bigger than that, it had to do something extra. And so we can go over later what those elements are. Then in further enhancing how we go about managing growth and how it should look and where it should go, we have the major thoroughfare design guidelines, historic preservation guidelines, as well as educational guidelines. The city has adopted a cultural resource master plan, an opportunity zone master plan, and those give special considerations and guidelines for investment in mostly the areas that are along the major thoroughfares. You can go to the last slide, please. And then all within that, we have our CRA, Community Redevelopment Area, which is governed by the Florida statutes 163 as well. That allows a city to create an area that is determined to be economically disadvantaged or needs redevelopment or encouragement to increase property values. The redevelopment plan that was required to be adopted in order to create the CRA was done in 2001. It follows in consistency with our city's comprehensive plan. And it allows tax increment financing to provide leveraging of private funds to be invested in the CRA area. For those of you that are not aware, the CRA covers most of the commercial mixed-use areas along all the city's major thoroughfares, except the northern ends of Federal Highway and the southern end of Federal Highway, but it does not reach past A Street as you move west. So that's a really quick overview of the strategic plan and the various documents that fit underneath it. I'll try to answer any questions you might have and provide any more elaboration that you might want to have.
Anybody have any comments or questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm a little nervous to talk too much about this tonight, knowing that we're going to be digging deeper into it and everything. I feel like we could go way off like crazy if we wanted to. So I like it if people do have some more general or like questions maybe, but.
Is this going to be a separate workshop? The strategic plan?
Madam Mayor, the strategic plan is a document that should be visited annually.
Right.
Because of its importance and how you set, and as William showed in the slide, how it ties into everything.
Right.
In the perfect world with better timing, we would be probably involved in strategic planning conversations now in the month of March.
It was done a year ago?
April, 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. The pandemic throws up 2019, we went through a visioning session, and from those conversations, how we produce this. But again, what you don't see in the pillars, and you'll hear us talk about pillars in the budget process quite a bit, is how does an investment or a project or program tie back into accomplishing those objectives underneath the pillars? Everything that we do from an operating standpoint or operating budget should tie back to accomplishing a pillar or an objective. So what you see, there's a lot of detail. That's where the operating budget comes in. So your point, Commissioner Stokes, this is an annual, yearly breathing document that's not set in stone. This is the visioning conversation that we need to have as a group that then leads to conversations about where do we invest in sales tax? What is our development posture to the public? It ranges all the way to ERPs and what do we want our playground to look like per se?
Right.
So again, yes, it's a very detailed conversation. And it can come back and it should come back in a workshop to really deep dive it because we want to know what your vision is, what's your mission, what are your pillars if we want to tweak and whatnot.
Commissioner Robinson?
I think strategic planning is tremendously important. We just talked about how we're going to spend an inheritance of penny sales tax. Next, we're going to talk about an inheritance from federal recovery money. I think in a big part of our strategic plan is how we're going to pay for things when we don't get the gifts from outside. And if we start discouraging investment in Lake Worth, we're going to be in a bind when the gift money from outside isn't there.
Why do you say that? And what do you say? Well, you just made a comment that I'm just a little curious about. If we discourage development,
plain and simple, if we discourage development.
Are you thinking that people are doing that?
I don't want to the opposite of discouragement is not discouraging. I do not want to
I think it's
discourage.
encouraging.
Pardon me?
I think encouraging is the opposite of discouraging.
Well, however you want to say it, I don't want to discourage investment. And we're going to have to pay for things that we all want out of investment in Lake Worth. I'm concerned about the sustainability part of this, but we do need to incentivize investment. So we're going to have to balance that out when we talk about, and I'm not going to use that M word, but improving things going forward. I, for one, think that historic preservation discourages investment a lot of times when we have problems investing individually in Lake Worth. I just am concerned that we've spent a lot of time talking about spending gift money when we need to work on our working budget with how we're going to pay for things.
Yeah.
The gift money. That's all.
Commissioner, there you go. I always want to say Commissioner Sarah.
You can say that, that's
Okay,
fine.
Sarah.
Again, I'm going to say thank you to William Waters and their team for the strategic plan. I understand that it's a working plan that needs to be tweaked as times change, right? And I'll just segue to this. I've been saying for a very long time, what is the city's business plan for the future when the CRA sunsets? Because I don't think that a lot of people realize how much money comes into the city through CRA grants and funding. So I'm just going to throw this out there as an item that we will be talking about because he brought up the CRA. The CRA does actually, one of the boundaries is right down the middle of C Street, which is crazy because if you live on that side of C Street, you can't get the grant, but you live over here, you can. I ran on the platform of redistricting the CRA, and I'm still working on the information that needs to be brought forward because, you know, to think forward, as Commissioner Robinson just said, you know, where's the money coming from? We want to encourage investment. You know, we want to be investment friendly if it makes sense to our strategic plan and to our city. But at the same time, you know, we need to talk about doing a findings and necessity study of redistricting the CRA and taking them out of downtown and putting them in the blighted area where we need them now, down Dixie Highway, down Federal Highway, to get the investment where we need it. And if we do those things, then we're not knocking down historical buildings to be able to make room to build, right? Let's give them the land where we need the infrastructure and the investment. And I just want us all to kind of, you know, because we're talking about strategic plans and what is our plan in the future. And we really need to talk about, you know, the CRA and keeping that as part of our pot of money that comes in, that, you know, that is a bigger picture on how we're going to keep moving the needle. But we're not going to be able to move that needle if we don't redistrict them and look at the forefront of the next after 8 years from now, is the CRA still going to be here to be able to carry some of that weight of the finances of the city? So I just want us to be mindful of that, you know, because it is part of the strategic plan and it's a working plan. So a findings and necessity study has to be one of those things that we invest in, right? Those studies to say, okay, does it make sense to redraw their boundaries into a different area? Does it meet Florida statute 163.3 and the findings? And then go before the county and say, here's how much the county's going to get back from the TIF. Here's how much the city's going to get back, and here's how much you're going to lose if we get redistrict. So I'm very development friendly, investment friendly, if it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the strategic plan talk through, because it is ever changing, we need to keep those things, you know.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yeah, I hear Commissioner Robinson's concern about not wanting to discourage investment, and I definitely hear the concern that although we're in a temporary stage where we might have some free gift money, that's not a long-term situation. We need to be thinking, how are you going to make the city work long-term? And we certainly, I think, even if we're only 40 days in, we're all well aware that financing our city is challenging. And we have to think about that. However, I think it's maybe a little bit too narrow to figure that the only path forward is new investment, new investment. There is also a thought that says, hey, there are things that make this city unique and different from other places. And we probably have a responsibility, and I certainly was elected on a platform of making sure that we do take care of those things that are unique and don't undermine what for many people in many people's mind is sort of our golden goose. The fact that we are different from a lot of the rest of South Florida. And if one goes certain investment patterns, a valid question for everybody, especially us as decision makers, is does that pattern increase our difference from other communities or decrease it? Does it make us more one of the pack that we're now competing with the rest of South Florida and we're just competing with a whole lot? Or does it help to enhance our differences? And I think that's perhaps where a lot of people say, well, sure, you need some investment. You need to replace things that are empty. Probably some of the empty lots along Dixie Highway are a big concern. But we also need to be pretty careful and thoughtful and develop yardsticks of what is it that helps us and what is it that in fact may be a distance. For instance, another approach moving forward is to say, let's do very innovative things, whether it's with our electric utility, whether it's with coastal energy, whether it's a bunch of things that can be done, whether it's dealing with our cultural diversity. Let's do those innovative things and have that be part of the engine that draws innovative businesses, innovative residents to the city. Those are also possible models. There are a lot of different models. South Florida has a long and somewhat dubious history of boom bust development is the only way to move forward in South Florida. And it's created its share of problems. We have a 4-county task force that is known internationally as well as nationally for being focused at a regional scale and local on climate change. We are all coastal places. There's very little in that strategic plan that says, hey, what are we doing to mitigate, to actively make a commitment to reducing our carbon footprint or deal with adaptation to changes that are coming? I talked with Ed earlier today. One of the statistics that I recently learned, which I got to check up to make sure it's true, I suspect it is though, is remember that map of lightning strikes? Mm-hmm. Each degree centigrade, this is the piece of information I was given, each degree centigrade of increased warming raises your probability of lightning strikes 10 to 12%. Each of those climate change things also affect precipitation, expected precipitation. They also affect evaporation, a whole bunch of things that we have quite a bit of data that tells us where things are going. We need to have that be part of, and that can be an economic engine if we get enough reputation that we are on the lead front edge of that and we are moving forward.
That's the trick.
That's the trick. And
And part of it is marketing and branding.
But you got to have some real content.
And I want to do that, because we all love the golden goose, but we don't want an infinite.
No, that's icing on the cake, that money. That's making some of the things possible that we want to do. But underneath, we are still, in a couple of years, 10 years, that won't be here.
Right.
And the city will.
Yeah, we all agree on that.
The golden goose needs to keep producing. And I just am concerned about how to make that a financial benefit that we love. The CRA taxes go into Lake Worth. When the CRA isn't there, it's going to go to the county.
I didn't say not there. I said redistricting them. There's a whole different world.
No, well, I'm not disagreeing. That's much harder to redistrict. It's going to be much harder when the CRA isn't in existence, because we're not going to get that money reinvested directly into Lake Worth.
Correct.
It's going to go to the county.
The TIF money?
Yep.
Yes.
Which is why we got to.
That's why it's so important that it exists. So I look forward to a financial sustainable city, because without income, we can't spend what everybody wants. I mean, the amenities that we want.
Commissioner Stokes.
I just wanted to add that I agree with Commissioner McVoy on several points. But when I look at this document and some of the things that it's saying that we treasure, our cultural diversity, our historical heritage, I think we need to just make sure that we're living up to some of those values. And, you know, especially when it comes to our diversity as we're growing and making sure that we're doing it in a way that is not going to be pushing out the residents that make us so rich.
Mhm.
I think that's a very fine line we have to battle, but it doesn't mean that we're anti-development or that we're
Right, you can do both.
anti-growth. It
No, I mean, we
yeah.
want to financially benefit from that.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the trick. It ain't easy.
Yeah, and I mean, there's other things that other towns and cities are doing to help become a little bit, and we'll dig into this more, but like I've heard other towns like that, because we do have affordable housing crisis, we do have a housing crisis. There's not enough housing for people who want to live here. That having these kind of like project ready things to go, instead of like open it, you know, hey, come to Lake Worth, here's all of these guidelines and everything that you need to figure out and spend time and money doing. If it's like, hey, these are like, you know, if you pick this up and tweak it, you're like ready to go. You know, like there might be ways to make, which I'm happy to do if it's going to lower the cost to the developer, which will get passed on to whoever's going to be buying or renting that property. So I think, you know, there's, I don't know, those shipping containers, you know, there's a lot of interesting stuff out there that we can look at that might not mean, you know, we can still grow and invest, but in some interesting ways.
I love hearing everybody's ideas. This is a lovely aspirational piece of PowerPoint. No one is against, you know, a development. We need more development. We need more income coming to the city. There's no question about that. But I think that, you know, we talk about, like Commissioner Stokes, you know, the cultural diversity. We really don't do anything to honor our cultural diversity.
Very little.
They're sort of like on the west side of town. And I think one of our issues or one of our challenges is branding and marketing. For example, the Street Painting Festival. Lake Worth is known for this amazing event, okay? One of the things that I'm starting to work on with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and different groups is to try to get, and we're thinking about, and it'll come to you, but in February perhaps, having a day of world diversity and have at Bryant Park, you know, and I've tasked the Hispanic Chamber with, tell me how many groups are in this city. You can say there's Mexicans and Guatemalans, but there's a lot more, and they're aware of that. They're a good resource. I was unaware of the fact that we had a large community of folks from Bangladesh. When we had the Centennial program years ago, we had one day, which was wonderful. We had Bolivian dancers and Irish dancers and Finnish dancers and food and music and stuff during the day. So what I'd like to, so I guess not to belabor the point, is I want to see more of that kind of thing. Along with it, we have to have a balance between getting the development, getting new dollars here, getting new people to move into the city, helping the lives of the people that are already here. We're looking at, I had a meeting with Joan from the CRA about possibly identifying, and I'm going to work with the city about this, possibly identifying one just to start out as a program, as a, you know, a pilot program, find a house. And William Waters, you can probably help us with this. You know, we need to find a house that is so overburdened with code, it's been boarded up for a long time, figure out what we can do to get a local person to look at that house and say, and have it assessed, have somebody go in there and say, this is what needs to be done. And if somebody can, you know, if we can either help them find the funding, let's get somebody that's currently a renter of a small building by a landlord and they're paying too much into a house, into a homeowner. I mean, it doesn't always have to be new development. And I think those kinds of things, that kind of innovative, that kind of creative, so we have an opportunity here to be really creative. We're 7 square miles. We're not this giant sprawling place. So I would like to see, along with the new development and the new roads and the new everything else, a sense of joy, a sense of excitement about being here, a sense of we recognize everybody and let's live it. And I mean, to put it away, it's a party to live here. And it is a party to live here. You know, we need things like the evening on the avenues was very, you know, for years and years, that was a wonderful thing. If we, you know, we have a giant LGBTQ community here. And I'm thinking that our World Diversity Day, and I hope that you'll support me on this, will be, you know, during the day, it'll be families and music and food and lovely things. And then at night, what better place for a great drag show than Bryant Park? So we can embrace everybody's diversity here. And that's the kind of thing we need to be branded. We need to be put on the map. That's that great city that, yeah, they have some new buildings and you might not like the mid. I mean, I toured the mid the other day and I was actually quite impressed with the amenities that they have for their residents. You know, the common area, they have free Wi-Fi, they have places that people can work. They now have a place where you can buy like salads in it. And on the other side of that building, they have a little kitchen and couches. And if you don't want to entertain in your apartment, meet me down at the place.
It's a great space.
I mean, it's a wonderful space. And then the work, I was very, you know, the work, I wasn't aware. I mean, it was really a great experience for me. And I think if you haven't done it, you should do it. On the ground floor, it's the work live space. And in the beginning, in the front facing Dixie is this large space to do your business. And you walk out the door and there's the apartment. It's like my grandparents used to live above the grocery store. That same kind of concept. So we have an opportunity here to really balance development. No one wants this to become Boca. No one wants this to become Delray, but we have to have something. So let's try to find some programs like find a house that somebody can be a homeowner in. Let's have a thing where, you know, where we actually do. I mean, we have, you know, the hatch down there has this great outdoor space. And I don't know what it really gets used for. And the conversations that I've had, and I've had, you know, I'm with the CRA and I've been meeting with Joan and getting to know her and getting to know the process and, you know, a little bit better with, you know, a different perspective. And she's open to you know, some of these ideas, the idea of the house, you know, finding a house to rehab. That's something that if it's in their CRA district, talk about redistricting, that's where they could put their money rather than just a building on downtown.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think on some level, we're all on the same page. No one's discouraging development. And to the public, no one is just, I mean, there was a thing on Facebook the other day, you know, the commission, I'm like, no. We just wanted to be responsible. Okay, we don't, with all due respect, Mr. Robinson, we don't really want another Lucerne.
Correct.
And I met with Alex Rosenberg, the developer, and you know, he said, "Well, not going to be the Lucerne." And I said, "Well, then you need to get it out there. If this project is going to work." And I'm more open to it than he thought I would be, just in terms of the project. What, you know, I mean, the history of the land makes me crazy, but here we are. What was I just going to say, Rosemary?
You met with.
I met with him.
But you have to do more than just say, I'm not.
I told him, I said, listen, if you're saying that you're not going to be the Lucerne, you've got to tell people what that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
How is it?
How is it different? What's the difference? If, you know, if they, I mean, there's, and, you know, we're encouraged now just in terms of, you know, we all know that with the L&M project, nothing is, it's this amorphous project that he would like to bring to the city if it fits the city and if we all approve it.
Okay.
And I believe he understands that there's some work to be done with that whole project, that, you know, the picture that they keep showing is like not really does a disservice to them, because that's really not what the city's looking for. So we're looking for creative solutions to how to get good development, how to get money into the city, and how to, at the same time, celebrate the city. And that doesn't really cost a lot of money. Okay, it takes energy, and I call on the citizens, because as we all walked around and knocked on doors, everybody wants us to do something different and make it happen and make it more exciting. And we can't do it alone. We need those folks that when I knocked on a door, you all knocked on more doors than I did. When we heard that, okay, now it's our time to put that forward. But we need the help of the citizens. And if that's in casual groups of neighbors that get together and come to us with an idea, great, we're here to listen. That's one of the things I think that, you know, there was a mandate for us. I mean, we were elected rather dramatically. And I think part of what that was bring us something new. And every time I spoke with somebody, and I spoke with the Parrot Cove the other day, everyone's looking for that, the stability. We need financial stability, and we need to have fun. And that's not just the 5 of us or the staff. It's got to, I mean, look at, I remember I sat in that chair in 1993, when Marion Weber and Aaron came to the city and said, we'd like to do a street painting project. The street painting festival, and they did it. We've helped them, but those two ladies did it with the help of a lot of volunteers and some support for the city. I want people out there that have great ideas to bring them to us, and we will help you make them happen. So that's my 2 cents. That's all I'm gonna say.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, yep, there's a light on.
A couple things. So to piggyback on your great ideas, I love that. I actually saw a presentation today from Don, who was part of the tourism and the
I'm
tourism
meeting with
plan.
him tomorrow.
And I watched the entire the whole slideshow. And and Jess will attest to this. I said, I love the pictures, but I'm a little dismayed that there was not one picture from the west side of Dixie.
Right. Right. It's
And I
always-
said, let's look at the Hatch Building. I told them about the Wingfield Wall and the celebration of artists. And I said, so when you're showing this to get people involved from the city, because we're going to be looking for residents out there to sit on this advisory tourism board. I said, do yourself a favor and change out some of those pictures from the Gulf Stream. I said, I didn't see a picture of the golf course.
Right.
So, I had good conversation with him. It's a great presentation. There's a great tourism plan that's coming down the pipeline for us, which is great for the entire city, that we're actually moving towards that. Hey, we are a great city. Here's why. So that's something to celebrate. I just want to segue into a point of information that we really need to talk about. Since Mr. Bornstein has sent his resignation, and I have put in hours and time and countless thought processes on how we're going to be serving our community the best in replacement. And that brings me back to our code of ordinances. And I've made some phone calls and reached out to some other heads of cities to say, do you require your city manager to live within the city? And I was surprised at how many no's I've got.
Right.
So because we can't really talk about it,
It's the only place we can talk.
a point of information is we really need to, before we move our project forward on retaining a city manager, go back and revisit this ordinance. Because number one, I feel like we're
Charter review.
landlocked. I'm sorry?
Charter review.
Yeah, it's an
that's
ordinance. It's a city ordinance that,
So
Let's review
the charter.
right, but it's section, it's 2.3, but the charter review is going to be done months from now. This
Right.
needs to be talked about before we hire a city
But I
manager.
believe it's in the charter that they have to live in the city.
It is.
Yeah.
It's
Madam
2.3.
Mayor,
Yep.
No, it's not in the charter. It's in the ordinances, right?
it's not a charter provision. It's actually in chapter 2 of the city's code of ordinances.
Thank
So
you.
it's only an ordinance.
All right.
Thank you.
So
So-
it
Get
is.
used to the charter years ago.
Hang on, let me finish.
Go ahead.
So it's very important to me that before we start moving this process forward, that because of the hours that I'm putting in and, really understanding that for us, and remember, the housing market's at a high right now.
Listen, I
So for us
agree
to,
with you.
for us to, to find a talent that loves or wants to learn about our city,
Mhm.
I really want us to all take a step back before our next conversation workshop and think about readdressing this
Mhm.
of the city manager having to live within the city within 6 months
It
of.
used to be the city attorney too.
Right.
But they
Well, it
took
also
that out.
says the utility director, which we don't have anymore either. So when we change it, we need to change all of it.
Yeah.
And, I really want us to think about instead of looking outside, promoting from within. So that's all I want for a point of information tonight. Just meditate on that, think on it. And there's expenditures that we're not thinking about.
This is not an easy market to buy and sell a house.
No, but I'm saying there's other expenditures with Mike separating from the city, that checks that have to be written and funds that have to be spent. And that's all I'm going to say, because I don't know how much more I can say. And Christie's probably going to chime in any minute now. But just, this is something that I want us to, to workshop on our next meeting.
Why can't you say,
Yeah, well, I
is it the
don't,
point of this so we can talk?
yeah, why,
This
what,
meeting's been noticed?
Because I've got to give staff direction to be able to bring back for us to talk about at the
Okay.
workshop.
Right. And so, Madam Mayor, if I may, just to clarify, since this was a work session with the certain agenda items on it, you can certainly have any discussion you want tonight. But because we're doing sort of these hybrid meetings where we're allowing public comment to come in via email, that public comment is really based on what's advertised in our published agendas. So before we can take official action on something that comes up during a discussion that's not on the published agenda, the request is for there to be consensus for staff to bring it back on the next published agenda. That way you can take public comment on it and then take official action without any concerns of violating the sunshine law.
Well, I understand that. I think you're intending that this is going to come back.
Right, but I just don't want to, I'm not very familiar with the sunshine law, so I'm not trying to put my toe over any line right now.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying about the agenda, but the strategic plan, it's kind of a broad,
Because to me, like, that's,
with a broad brush tonight, Christie.
Lynn, it's the residency requirement. It's just an ordinance and not in the charter. We could put on the next agenda, changing that ordinance.
What?
If
Do you don't think we
so
need a
desire.
discussion about
We
it?
can do that under discussion of an agenda item,
What agenda item?
of changing the residency requirement.
Okay,
So I would certainly,
good. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you.
okay, well,
For all of that.
You looking at me?
I certainly, I don't know what the formal procedure is, but I certainly would encourage staff at our next available meeting to bring forward an item, whether it's for discussion at that point or simply an ordinance revision, for us to look, revisit and open up the possibility of residency, because I hear all the concerns about housing costs and yes, in some ways it's ideal for the city manager to live here, but I feel very strongly that we need to do a national level search,
We are.
high level search.
We are. We've already, Colin Basinger's.
Or even lots of answers.
And that, I don't think we want to shoot ourselves in the foot as far as hard requirement on residency. So
And we
I
can
would.
talk more about it when we have it on agenda. I mean, I have some ideas, but let's, when it's on the agenda.
Right, so we'll have it on the next agenda.
Yeah, I would also, if Christie, give us some guidance. I would also like, we had mentioned about when we were talking about the city manager, replacing the city manager. I had a conversation with Juan the other day, because one of the things we talked about was getting an interim city manager. And if this is okay to talk about, we'll put it on the agenda next time. I don't know that we need that. I spoke with Juan about his workload and all that stuff. And, I would like that to be an agenda item next time, is whether or not we hire an interim city manager,
I think it is on the agenda already.
whether we hire an interim.
Isn't that on the agenda for March?
Already, Madam Mayor, if I may, there's already an item
May
to
4th?
discuss interim city manager in the May 4th commission.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Good. I'm right on it then. I am like with it. I am focused and ready to go.
Right, BPF.
I'm telling you.
Yes.
Okay, the strategic plan, we have a lot to talk about. So how are we doing? It's 10 to 10.
Can I just add?
Yep.
Motion to adjourn. I think, we all got really excited. I think we're all very excited about the city hall annex and the potential there. And then we also have the L&M and all this stuff. And I think we really need to view that whole part of town, the cultural plaza. And I think before we can really move forward, we need to come together and at some point, hopefully soon, because we want to figure out what we're doing with the L&M projects or the property.
Right.
What do we want that part of the city to look like, that part of downtown?
That's the workshop.
So that's what workshop?
May, isn't it? It's on the 6th, May 6th.
So we're gonna be able to.
Well, May
do
6th is the what?
that's the.
I have it as a workshop.
sustainability. Do you know what's on that?
May 6th is it's a workshop, scheduled workshop, and the topics are a moving target right now, but sustainable bonus is a topic.
Right.
And then there's some follow-up conversations on some other items that Mike and I have to finalize. So I would be
You're
talking
so
ahead right
mysterious.
now.
You're just a mysterious
Well,
guy.
it's a long list of stuff. And again, as you can see from tonight's healthy conversation, we ranged from one end to the other end, and you covered a lot of ground. And it was good, healthy conversation, but it's just a snapshot of the amount of work that's ahead of us. So I can definitely specifically identify the topics for May 6th and email you guys tomorrow.
Is there any chance, we're supposed to start at 6 o'clock. Is there any chance that instead of starting at, because we're going to be chatting a lot on the 6th, of starting the meeting earlier than 6 o'clock?
Madam Mayor, I think that's the wish of the body. Chrissy, correct me if I'm wrong, but again, it's when you want to meet.
I mean,
Don't have a closed door attorney session or anything that day?
no,
No, that was
it's just a workshop.
Well, that was supposed to be today, but it was rescheduled.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't know when it was.
I'm open to,
I mean, I think it'd be, rather than be here at 10 o'clock at night, Ms. Godot?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it's at your pleasure what time you want to set the meeting for.
I'm waiting.
Can you hear me?
5.
Yes.
No, I'm,
Oh, okay.
Fine,
I'm-
yes.
yeah, thank you.
If we do bump it up, I do think we need to order dinner, because that gives me like no time to eat. Like,
God, you and the food. I swear, you're like living with my
I'm
wife.
A sandwich.
Ms. Stokes on ordering dinner or something. right?
like I end my workday at 5 and I'm gonna get here, or, at 5.
No, you're getting here at 4.
No,
so-
no, we're trying to move it up.
You're gonna move it up to 4.
I mean, I could do 3. I mean, I'm self-employed. I make my own schedule.
I'm the same.
Talking about
I don't
just
have
the
court that.
workshops.
Yes, to move up.
Just this one, this
Right,
workshop.
just, yeah, the workshop.
This workshop on, because we're going to be covering a lot of ground and I'd rather do it, finish at 9 o'clock than 10 o'clock.
Or midnight.
And
Or midnight.
is there a difficulty with some degree of refreshments, food, whatever?
Well, it's not very professional.
I'm
Really have a,
I don't care. I don't care. I mean, I bring a sandwich. We had a salad tonight, but we can do that. We can,
Or at least a break.
Madam Mayor, if I may. help
Sure.
Add some historical perspective.
thank you.
In prior times, it was a common practice. It's no secret that there was a taking of turn of bringing something to eat before the meetings.
Mhm.
Because typically we're rushing from a job,
Right.
rushing from, classroom or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
And, obviously there's no, conversations and violate sunshine.
But what we're going to,
Turns, whose turn was it? Was a typical email on a Tuesday or a Thursday workshop
Mhm.
of the pickup. And, Commissioner Robinson can chime in. And that's a way, if you want to bump up the time, and get a bite to eat, and some of these conversations, we could go to 10 o'clock.
and so we would I would sponsor
We'll,
that.
like,
And
take
I would
turns.
pay for it myself.
Yeah, so, Mayor, it's your turn this Thursday, then, you kind of just create a list and you kind of know.
Are you guys good with corn dogs on a stick? No, I'm just joking.
Hey, well, we would support local,
No,
support local.
oh, absolutely.
But it's something that was a common,
But that,
even
that
back when,
that was prior to the meeting. I
yeah,
don't know if that was what you were thinking of, but
Oh,
well, just trying to help,
yeah, no, that's
folks and
helpful.
sprinting from work to, job, part 2.
The thin one is worried about, I'm like, I don't have to eat
I'd rather not have a meeting and eating at the same
at the
time.
same time, right?
But
So
take a
what,
break.
is there a chance, Commissioner Stokes, that you could get out a little early on that day? We're not as a practice, but just, we got a lot of work to do.
So 4 PM on that day.
And then we would eat at 4,
Meeting starts at 5.
4:30. You don't need an hour to eat.
Yeah. And then we'll take a snack break at 9.
We're gonna,
I'm with,
That works.
Commissioner Snokes has
Well,
some
hopefully
pretty
we
innovative ideas.
Get a little bit more efficient and, we turn these.
Because the whole point of it is to start early, so we can't
Right.
eat at 4 and not start the meetings after 5, because that's the whole point. I mean, that's,
I start at 4:30.
yeah, that'd be great.
Here 4, have whatever food is here. We'll talk about that next.
I don't have, we can come here at 4 and I can eat, I just need a break at some point to eat dinner.
Well, it's,
Okay, I'm flexible here, but 4 o'clock it is. I don't want
All
to.
right, 4 o'clock sounds good.
and so we'll eat at 4 o'clock?
Yeah, meeting
Yeah.
starts at 4:30.
Sabina can help coordinate ordering, and it ranges from pizza, the Chinese, people have cooked and brought meals on their turn. It's wide open.
Okay.
But we're here to help facilitate,
So we're not gonna break the sunshine law at 4 o'clock.
no,
Okay.
We're not gonna break.
there's no.
We're never gonna break
Yeah,
this.
there's no conversation taking place.
Not at 4, not at 5.
Motion to adjourn.
So we'll talk about who's gonna furnish the May 6th.
Are we voting on that?
You don't need a motion, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
Okay,
What?
great.
To adjourn, second.
There's no motion to adjourn. There is no motion taken at a work session.
Oh, to adjourn?
Just adjourn, I'll just note the time.
Drift off.
Goodbye.